Welcome back to the quiet apothecary. Take a slow breath, settle into where you are, and let the shoulders soften a little. There is no hurry tonight, and nothing here that asks anything of you. Tonight we travel far to the cold north, into a long low house of timber and turf, where a fire burns low against the winter dark, and where the wind off the black water comes feeling at the door all the long night through, and finds it shut, and goes wandering away again over the snow. Imagine for a moment the deep of a Scandinavian winter more than 1,000 years ago, in the age we now call the age of the Vikings. When the long ships were drawn up on the shingle for the winter and turned over against the frost, and the men who sailed them in the summer sat now by the fire, and the whole great cold world drew in close around the warmth. The house is long and low, built of heavy timber, and roofed and walled with turf, so that from the outside, in the blue dusk, it looks almost like a low green hill, with a thread of smoke rising from it. And only the small yellow glow at the door tells you that there are people living within. Down the center of the long room runs the hearth, a long shallow trench of stone, and along its length the fire burns low, not blazing, only glowing, a soft red line of embers with here and there a small flame standing up and bowing and lying down again. The smoke rises slow and blue toward the smoke hole in the high dark roof, and the light of the fire moves softly upon the great carved posts that hold the roof, and upon the long benches that run down either wall, where the people of the house sit and lie wrapped in their furs and their woolen cloaks against the cold. From the dark rafters overhead hang the things of the house, the dried fish and the smoked meat, the coils of rope, and, in among them, gathered in small bundles and tied with twists of wool, the dried herbs of the healer, hanging head down in the warm smoke, the yarrow and the meadowsweet and the angelica, and a dozen more besides, so that the whole long room smells of wood smoke and dried fish and the dry sweet ghost of the summer flowers. The storm is up outside. You can hear it, far off and steady, the long low roar of the wind over the turf roof, and beneath it, fainter still, the slow heavy fall of the sea upon the shingle, and now and then a hiss of fine snow flung against the timber wall. But in here it is warm. In here the fire glows, and the firs are deep, and the dark is kind. By the hearth, a little apart, sits the one we have come to listen to. She is the healer of this house, the one they call the Eltignir, the leech, which in that old tongue meant simply the one who heals, and she is no longer young, her hair gone grey, her face lined and weathered by the long years and the cold winds, her eyes still sharp and kind in the firelight. Her hands are slow and careful and very still, the hands of one who has done delicate and difficult work for a very long time and learned never to hurry it, and beside her on the floor of beaten earth stands her box, a small chest of dark carved wood, worn smooth by years of handling, and within it, in little pouches of soft leather and small boxes of horn and twists of cloth and birch bark, lie her remedies, the dried herbs and the salves, and the small bone needles and the carved sticks, and the 100 small things she has gathered and made and carried through a long life of healing the people of this cold and lonely coast. She has set a small soapstone pot upon the embers, and in it a little water is beginning to warm, and the steam rises thin and pale into the firelight. She is in no hurry. There is the whole long winter night ahead, and the storm will not blow itself out until the dawn. and there is nothing to do now but tend the fire and listen to the wind, and remember, that is where I would like to begin. There, in that long warm room, on that long cold night, with the fire glowing low down the center of the hall, and the dried herbs hanging from the dark rafters, and the snow hissing soft against the timber, and the old healer sitting still by the embers with her box of remedies at her side. Tonight we will walk together through 100 of the old remedies of the Viking Age of the North, 100 quiet ways the people of cold Scandinavia tended their hurts and their fevers and their long dark winters more than 1,000 years ago. We have gathered them from the sagas, those long old stories the people of Iceland set down in writing in the centuries that followed, full of feuds and voyages and, here and there, the small precise detail of how a wound was washed or a fever cooled. We have gathered them from the old leechcraft of the north, the slow knowledge of the healing herbs passed from hand to hand and from mother to daughter through the long unrecorded years. And we have gathered them, too, from the cold ground itself, from the things the diggers have lifted out of the old graves and the old rubbish heaps, the seeds and the salve boxes and the bone needles that tell us, without a word, what these people grew and gathered and used. We will move through them slowly, grouped by the hurt they were meant to mend. We will begin with the wounds and the injuries of battle, for these were a warrior people, and the closing of a wound was the first of all their healing arts. Then we will pass to the fevers and the sicknesses of the cold months, and then to the troubles of the stomach, and then to the bringing of children into the world, and the healing of women, and then to the aching of the body, the stiff joint, and the bad tooth, and the sore eye, and then to the troubles of the mind, and the long sleepless night, and at the last we will come to the strangest part of all, to that old place where the herb and the charm and the rune ran together, where the medicine of the hand could not be told apart from the medicine of belief. That is the pace I would like to keep tonight. Slow, even, steady as the soft fall of snow in the dark beyond the wall. Settle in. There is nothing here that asks for hurry, and nothing here that asks anything of you. There will be no test at the end. You do not need to hold a single one of these 100 remedies in your memory. Let them drift past you like the slow blue smoke that rises from the hearth, and let the body grow quiet at its own slow pace. And if your eyes should close somewhere in the first dozen of them, that is exactly as it should be. The 100 remedies will go on softly whether you are listening or no, the way the storm goes on softly outside the warm wall, whether anyone is awake to hear it. Before we turn to the first of them, let us pause a little while and look around us, that we may know where we are and how the people of that far cold age thought about the healing of the body. Their medicine was not our medicine. It knew nothing of the small unseen creatures that carry sickness, nothing of the chemistry of the body, nothing that we would now call science. It was an older thing, a slower thing, a thing made of the hedge and the bog and the bare hillside, of the salve and the broth and the spoken charm, and of the long patient watching of what worked and what did not. Kept in the memory of the healer, because there was, for most of that age, no writing in which to keep it. The one who healed in such a house, as this was very often a woman. For it seems the women of the north were the chief keepers of the healing arts, the ones who knew the herbs of the summer hillside and gathered them and dried them and kept them, and who came in the night when a child was sick, or a man was hurt, or a woman was in labor. She was the El-e-Nur, the leech, the healer, and her knowledge was held all in her head and her hands, passed to her across a long life by the older women before her, and passed on by her in turn to the younger women who watched her work. It is worth pausing a moment over how little, and yet how much, we truly know of these healers and their arts, for the people of the Viking Age left us almost no books of their own. They were not, for the most part, a writing people, not in the long flowing way of the monks of the south with their parchment and their ink. They had their runes, the angular letters carved in wood and bone and stone, but these were used for short things, for names and for memorials and for charms, not for the setting down of long knowledge. And so the healing lore of the North was never written by the people who used it. What we know from 3 quiet sources, and it is worth knowing them, for they are the windows through which we will look all this long night into that far warm room. The first is the sagas, the long prose tales of the heroes and the families of the Old North, which were set down in writing in Iceland in the centuries that came after, long after the age they tell of, by Christian scribes looking back at the heathen past of their own people. The sagas are not medical books, and they care nothing for teaching us how a wound was dressed, and yet, because their heroes are forever being wounded and healed so that they may fight again, the sagas let slip, here and there, in a line or two, the precise small truth of how the healing was truly done, the washing of the wound, the smelling of the belly hurt, the carving of the rune, told plainly and by the way, with the unmistakable ring of a thing the teller had seen with his own eyes. The second source is the old leechcraft of the wider North, the handed-down knowledge of the healing herbs that survived in the country memory and was at last, here and there, written down, telling us which herbs the northern peoples gathered and how they used them. And the third source is the cold ground itself, the graves and the rubbish heaps, and the old house floors that the diggers open in our own day, which give back to us, without a word, the seeds and the dried herbs, the small bone needles and the salve boxes, the amber beads and the carved runesticks, the silent solid proof of what these people grew and gathered and carried and used. From these 3 quiet sources, the saga and the leechcraft and the cold ground, we piece together the picture of the old northern healing, and through them we can sit, for this long night, at the shoulder of the old healer by the fire, and watch the slow careful work of her hands. And her healing rested upon a way of seeing the world that wove the body and the herb and the unseen powers all into one cloth. She believed, as her whole people believed, that the world was full of unseen forces, of gods and of the dead, and of the small hidden folk of the land, and that sickness might come from any of these, as well as from the cold and the wound and the bad water. So she healed with the herb and with the hand, but she healed too with the carved rune and the murmured charm and the call upon the old gods, upon air, who was the gentle goddess of healing, and upon the Dee-Sir, the women spirits of the family who watched over the births of the house. We will come to all of that, gently, at the very end of our long evening. For it is the strangest, and in its way the most touching part of the whole old art. But we will begin with the plain and the practical, with the herb crushed onto the bleeding wound. For that is where their healing began too, on the red field after the fighting, with a wound that must be closed before the sun went down. The water in the small soapstone pot is warm now. The old healer lifts it from the embers with a cloth about her hand and sets it on the flat hearth stone, and the thin steam rises and bends in the slow draught of the room. Somewhere down the long hall a child stirs in its sleep and is still again. The fire settles, and a small flame stands up and bows and lies down. Let us turn now to the first of our 100 remedies, and let us begin, as their healing began, with the closing of wounds. The first remedy is this: of all the herbs the warriors of the north carried with them, tucked into a pouch at the belt before they set out upon the long voyages of the summer, none was more trusted than the yarrow, the low feathery roadside plant, with its flat clusters of small white flowers and its fine leaves cut so deep and so many times over that they look like soft grey-green feathers, growing along every path and every field edge and every sunny bank. The healers of the north crushed the fresh leaves in the hand and pressed them straight onto the open wound, and the bleeding slowed, and the flesh seemed to close the better for it. So old and so wide is this use of yarrow that the plant carries the memory of war in its very name in many tongues, for it was called the soldier's herb and the wound, herb and the staunch blood, and the learned name we give it now, Achillea, looks back to an old story that the hero Achilles himself carried it to heal the wounds of his men. We know now that there is good sense beneath the old trust, for the yarrow does indeed help the blood to clot, and helps to keep a wound clean. But the warrior who tucked a handful of the dried grey leaves into his pouch before he sailed in the spring knew nothing of clotting, and only that his father had carried it, and his father before him, and that a crushed leaf of yarrow on a cut would slow the red flow where little else would. The second remedy is this, and it is one of the strangest and most vivid in all the old sagas. When a man took a deep wound to the belly, the healer needed to know whether the blade had pierced through to the gut within. For a wound that opened the gut was almost always a wound that would kill, and there was little point in long labor over a man already lost. And so they used the onion. The healer would make a strong porridge of onions and leeks and herbs, pungent and sharp, and feed it to the wounded man, and then wait, and then bend close and smell carefully at the open wound. If the sharp smell of the onion came out through the wound, then the gut beneath had been opened, and the man would die, and they told him so gently and let him rest. If no smell of onion came through, then the gut was whole, and there was hope, and they set to work to clean and close the wound. There is a saga that tells of just such a thing after a great battle, of a wounded warrior brought to a healing woman in a barn, where she boiled her sharp onion porridge for the wounded men, and went among them smelling at their wounds to learn who might be saved. It is a hard scene and a tender one, and behind its strangeness there lies a kind of rough good sense, for the smell of the onion through the wound truly would tell that the gut had been cut. The third remedy is this. In the cold, wet lands of the north there grows, in the bogs and the wet places and the soft sodden ground between the hills, a soft pale moss, the bog moss that we now call sphagnum, growing in great deep cushions and beds across the wet ground, that holds water as a sponge holds it, many times over its own weight, and that is by its own quiet nature, clean and slow to rot and gentle to the skin. The healers of the north gathered this moss and dried it a little and packed it into wounds as a dressing to soak up the blood and the seeping, and to keep the wound soft and clean beneath the bandage. We know now that the bog moss is mildly able to hold off the rot of a wound, and that it draws away the wet so kindly that it does the work of a clean dressing as well as many a thing we make on purpose. It was gathered in such quantity, in some places, that the bog moss of the north went on being used as a wound dressing not only in that far age, but down through all the centuries since, even into the great wars of the modern world, when the moss was once again gathered by the basketful from the cold bogs to dress the wounds of soldiers. The old healer in our longhouse, packing the soft pale moss into a sword, cut by the light of the fire, was using a dressing that would still be doing the same gentle work 900 years after she was dust. The fourth remedy is this: for a smaller cut, the kind a man or a woman takes in the ordinary course of the day's hard work, the splitting of the wood, or the gutting of the fish, or the slip of a knife at some small task, the healers of the north reached for two things that almost every house always had to hand: the cobweb and the honey. The fine grey cobweb from the dark corner of the high rafters was gathered into a little soft wad and pressed onto the cut, where it helped the blood to gather and to clot, and gave a soft, fine net of threads for the new skin to grow across, and over it, or mixed in with it, a little honey was smeared from the store, for the honey, as the old healers knew well by long watching without ever knowing the why of it, keeps a wound clean and sweet, and does not let it turn bad. We understand now that there is true virtue in the honey, for it draws the water out of any small creature of decay, and will not let the rot take hold, and the sweet golden salve of the bee was used to dress wounds all across the old world for this very reason. So a small cut in that far cold house was bound up with a wad of cobweb, and a smear of honey, and a strip of clean cloth, and very often it healed. And the man went back to his wood and his fish, and thought no more of it. The fifth remedy is this: before any wound could be dressed, it had first to be cleaned, and the healers of the north knew, as healers everywhere have always half known, by long and bitter watching, that a clean wound heals, and a dirty wound festers, and may take the life that the wound itself would have spared. So the first act of the healer over a wound was the washing of it, slow and thorough, with warm water from the soapstone pot, and very often with water in which the wood ashes had been steeped. The old lye water that the people of the north made and kept for the washing of their wool and their linen, for they had found, somehow, across the long generations of watching, that this ashen washing water cleaned a wound more deeply and more truly than the plain water did. The wound was bathed and bathed again, and the dirt and the broken cloth and the bits of the world picked carefully out of it, and only then, when it was clean, was it dressed and bound. It was slow and patient work, done by the steady light of the fire, and it was, of all the things the old healers did, perhaps the one that saved the most lives, this simple, careful, unglamorous washing of the wound before ever a salve or a charm came near it. The sixth remedy is this: a wound too wide to close of itself was sewn shut, and the healers of the north had the tools for it, and the skill, the fine needle of bone or of bronze, kept clean and sharp in the healer's box, and the thread of sinew or of wool or of fine drawn gut, and, above all, the steady patient hand to use them. The edges of the wound were drawn together and stitched, as a torn sail or a torn garment is stitched, in small careful stitches, and the closed wound was then bound over with clean cloth and left to knit. The sagas speak of such sewing of wounds, plainly and without wonder, as a thing the healers simply did, and the bone needles have come up out of the old graves to prove it, lying among the other small tools of the healing woman. There is something quietly astonishing in it, to think of a wound sewn closed by firelight, in a turf house in the deep of a northern winter, with a bone needle and a sinew thread, and the wounded man lying still and biting on a strap of leather, and the slow, careful hand of the healer drawing the edges together stitch by patient stitch. The seventh remedy is this. When a bone was broken, the healer set it, feeling carefully with her hands along the limb to find the break, and drawing the broken ends back into their true place. A thing of great pain to the one who suffered it, and then binding the limb stiff and straight, so that the bone might knit. For the splints that held the limb still, they used what the land freely gave them, straight rods of ash or of hazel cut from the wood, or very commonly broad strips of birch bark, which is light and strong and curls of its own nature around a limb, and which, soaked soft and wrapped warm about a broken arm or leg and bound tight, dries hard again and holds the bone as firm and as still as any cast of the modern world. The setting of bones is spoken of plainly in the sagas as a thing the healers knew, and the skeletons that come up out of the old graves show us broken bones that healed straight and true, which can only mean that someone, long ago, set them well. The old healer in our house, binding a broken arm in birch bark by the firelight, was doing a thing her people had done for longer than any of them could remember, and doing it, by the evidence of the bones themselves, with no small skill. The eighth remedy is this. When a wound bled and would not stop, when no pressing of moss or yarrow could hold the red flow back, the healers of the north fell back upon the oldest and the hardest of all the cures for bleeding, the hot iron. They would heat a blade or a rod of iron in the embers until it glowed, and lay it for one swift moment against the open vessel, and the searing heat would close the bleeding flesh and seal the wound. It was a fearful thing, the cautery, and it caused great pain, and the saga writers do not flinch from telling of it, of the smell and the cry and the swift mercy of it. But it stopped a bleeding that nothing else would stop, and so it had its place in the healer's art, kept for the worst, for the wound from which a man would surely bleed to death if the iron were not used. The old healer kept her irons clean and ready by the hearth, and used them seldom, and when she did use them, she used them fast, and turned away her own face, for it was the hardest thing she did. The ninth remedy is this. Beside the yarrow, the other great wound, herb of the north, was the plantain, the low broad-leafed weed with its ribbed oval leaves, spread flat against the ground, and its small spike of dull green flowers, the weed that grows in every trodden path, and every doorway, and every hard-packed yard, the one the old English called waybread, the bread of the wayside, for it springs up faithfully wherever feet have packed the earth hard. The healers picked the broad leaves and bruised them between the hands, or with a stone to bring out the juice, and laid them straight onto a cut or a sting or a bruise, and bound them there with a strip of cloth, and the swelling went down and the soreness eased, and the small wound began to close. So trusted was the plantain that it stands among the 9 sacred herbs of the oldest northern charm, named there as the mother of herbs that was opened from the east. The one the old verse says is mighty against poison and against the things that come flying through the air. We know now that the plantain leaf does indeed soothe a sting and help to draw the heat from a small wound, and the child of the north, stung by a nettle in the summer field, was taught to reach for the broad green leaf of the waybread growing in the path, just as a child today, in many a country still, is taught the very same thing by a grandmother who could not say where she learned it. The 10th remedy is this: when a wound or a sore had gone bad, when it had begun to swell and to redden, and to gather beneath the skin the thick matter of the festering, the healer drew it with a poultice, a warm, soft mass of herbs laid upon the place to draw the badness up and out. A common one was made of the nettle, the stinging nettle of the hedge and the waste ground, boiled soft in water until all the sting was gone out of it, and laid warm as the skin could bear, upon the swelling, and bound there with a cloth, and changed for a fresh warm one as soon as it cooled, through the long hours of the watching. The warmth and the wet of the poultice drew the gathering up to a head, and helped it to open and to drain, and the herb within it did what good it could, and slowly the angry red swelling softened, and the wound began to clean itself and to heal. The drawing poultice was one of the patient arts of the old healing, a thing of warmth and waiting, and the changing of one warm cloth for another through the long hours, sitting by the bed in the firelight, while the badness slowly drew. The 11th remedy is this: the people of the north knew the birch tree as they knew few other things, for it grew everywhere in their cold land. The pale, slender tree with its white bark and its small trembling leaves, and they used every part of it, the wood and the bark and the leaf and the sap, and from its bark, heated slowly in a covered pit so that it smouldered without burning and gave up its dark oils, they made a thick black tar, sticky and sweet-smelling and slow to dry. This birch tar had 100 uses about the house and the farm and the ship, for the sealing of boats and the dressing of leather and the waterproofing of all manner of things. But it had a healing use too, for smeared in a thin layer over a cleaned wound or a sore it sealed it from the dirt and the wet of the world, and the sharp, clean, resinous smell of it seemed to keep the rot away. We know now that the birch tar carries within it things that truly do hold off decay, and that the old healer who smeared the dark, sweet-smelling tar over a cleaned wound was, without knowing the why of it, laying down a true protection. It is one of the small wonders of the old healing, how often the thing they reached for by habit and by handed-down trust turns out, when we look at it closely now, to have had a real and a quiet virtue all along. The 12th remedy is this: beside the birch tar, the healers of the north used the resin of the pine, the sticky golden pitch that wells up from a wound in the bark of the pine tree, the tree, in a manner of speaking, healing its own hurt, sealing its own broken bark with the slow golden tears of its resin. They gathered this pine pitch from the trunks of the trees in the great cold forests, scraping it off where it had welled up and hardened, and warmed it soft at the fire, and spread it over a cleaned wound, where it dried again to a hard, clean seal, keeping out the dirt and the wet of the world, and where, like the birch tar, it carried in itself a true power to keep the rot away. A pine forest in the north is full of this slow golden bleeding of the trees, and the healers had only to walk out and gather it, and it cost them nothing but the walking, and it sealed a wound as well as anything they had. There is a fitness in it that the old healers may have felt, that the resin with which the wounded tree closed its own hurt should be the very thing they used to close the hurts of men, the forest, in a manner of speaking, lending its own slow healing to the people who lived among it. The 13th remedy is this: the sagas here and there slow down from their feuds and their voyages to show us a wound being healed, and one of the most careful of these is in the great saga of Greta the Strong, the tale of a mighty and unlucky outlaw. When Greta takes a deep wound, the saga tells us how it was tended, the cleansing of it, the laying on of healing herbs, the careful binding, and we are given, in a few plain lines, a small clear window into how a serious wound was truly handled in that age. It is the same pattern we have been tracing: the wash, the herb, the bandage, the patient waiting, set down by a saga writer who had surely watched it done. The sagas are not medical books, and they tell us of healing only by the way, when the story needs a hero to be hurt and mended so that he may go on. But because of that, because they are not trying to teach us, the small healing scenes they give us have the ring of the true thing seen, and through them we can stand, for a moment, at the shoulder of a healer of the north, and watch the slow work of her hands. The 14th remedy is this: the warriors of the north ate garlic, and not only for the savour of it, for they held that the garlic strengthened the body and kept off sickness, and there is an old belief that they ate it before battle for this reason. And there is a strange, grim echo of this in the onion test we have already spoken of, for the same sharp pungency that made the warriors prize the garlic and the onion as strengthening foods was the very thing that betrayed the gut wound to the healer's nose. The garlic and the onion, the leek and all their pungent kindred, were honored foods in the north, eaten freely and grown carefully, and held to be good for the body in 100 ways, to clear the chest and warm the blood and ward off the sicknesses of the winter. We know now that there is true virtue in them, that the garlic and its kin do indeed carry things that fight the small creatures of disease. And so the warrior who ate his garlic before he sailed was, in his rough way, not so far wrong. The 15th remedy is this: for the knitting of a broken bone, beyond the splint of birch and ash, the healers reached for the herb the old world came to call boneset and knitbone and comfrey. A tall, rough-leafed plant with broad hairy leaves and drooping bells of dull purple or cream flowers that grows in the damp ground by the water and the ditch and the stream side. They dug the root, which is black without and white and slimy within, and grated it, or they took the bruised leaf and made of it a poultice, a thick wet mass that they laid about the broken or the sprained limb and bound there, and as it dried it set hard like a soft cast about the limb, holding it still, and within it the herb did its slow deep work. So old and so strong was the belief that this herb helped bones to knit and sprains to mend that its very names say so, the knitting of the bone, and there is true virtue in it, for the comfrey carries within it something that does indeed help the torn flesh and the broken bone to grow back together, though it is a strong herb to be used with care and best upon the skin and not within. The old healer, packing the grated root about a mending arm, trusted the knit bone to do what its name said, and the bone, more often than not, knitted. The 16th remedy is this, and with it we will leave the wounds and the hurts of battle, and turn to the sicknesses of the cold months. When a limb was bruised or sprained, and swollen with the heat of the hurt, the healers drew that heat away with cold, and the simplest cold they had was the cold of stone. A smooth river stone or a healer's whetstone, left out in the frost or laid in the cold stream, was pressed against the hot swelling to draw the heat and ease the throbbing, and held there, and changed for another when it warmed. It is the plainest cure imaginable, the cold stone on the hot hurt. And yet it is sound, for the cold does truly ease the swelling and dull the pain, and we do the very same thing today, only with ice where they had the cold of the winter stone. There is a quiet pleasure in finding, at the very root of the old healing, things so simple and so right, the cold stone on the bruise, the clean water on the wound, the warm cloth on the gathering sore, the small unchanging wisdoms that needed no learning to be true. Now, before we go on, let us pause a moment and listen. The wounds are closed, the bones are set, the warriors are sleeping in their furs along the benches with their hurts bound up in birch bark and bog moss. But the winter is long, and the closing of wounds is only the first of the healer's arts, and there is a harder enemy than the sword waiting out there in the dark. For when the cold months came down upon the north, when the days shrank to a few grey hours, and the nights stretched, long and bitter, then came the fevers and the coughs, and the wasting sicknesses of the winter, creeping into the longhouse with the cold, settling into the chests of the old and the very young, and against these the healer needed all her gentler arts, the warm brews and the steaming herbs, and the slow patient tending of the feverish through the long nights. So let us draw a little closer to the fire, and turn now to the herbs and the cures of the cold months, the things the healers reached for when the fever came. The 17th remedy is this: when the fever burned in a body, when the brow was hot and the limbs ached, and the head throbbed with the heat of it, the healers of the north reached for the meadowsweet, the tall cream-flowered herb of the wet meadow and the stream side, whose froth of small flowers smells, in the summer, sweet as honey and almond, so that it was strewn upon the floors of the hall to sweeten the air, and was beloved above many herbs. They steeped the flowers and the leaves in hot water, and gave the warm, fragrant drink to the feverish to cool the heat and ease the ache, and it worked, more often than not. And the fever loosened its grip a little, and the aching eased. And here is one of the deepest wonders of all the old healing, for the meadowsweet carries within it the very substance from which, many centuries later, the great fever and pain medicine of the modern world would first be drawn, the one we now call by a name that looks straight back through its old botanical name, to the meadowsweet itself. The old healer steeping her cream-flowered herb for a feverish child by the firelight was reaching, all unknowing, for the true and distant ancestor of the small white tablet in the modern cupboard, the same gentle easing of fever and ache drawn from the same sweet meadow flower, 1,000 years apart. The 18th remedy is this, and it is the great herb of the north, the one the people of cold Scandinavia honored above almost all the others of their land, the angelica. It is a tall and stately plant, taller than a man when it is fully grown, with great round heads of small green-white flowers held high upon thick hollow stems, and it grows wild in the cold mountains and along the cold coasts and the cold riverbanks of the far north, in the very places where few other useful plants will grow at all. And so the northern people prized it all the more, as a great green gift fitted exactly to their hard and beautiful land. They held it sacred, and there are old names for it that tie it to the gods and to the holy, and they used every part of it. The root they chewed and brewed against the chill and against the troubles of the chest and the lungs. The stem they ate as a vegetable and candied as a sweet, the seed they used for the stomach. So valued was the angelica of the north that it was carried south and traded far. One of the few medicines that the cold north sent out into the wider world. And it was grown in gardens and gathered from the wild and laid in the healer's box in great quantity. The old healer in our longhouse, breaking off a piece of the thick aromatic root and giving it to a man with a heavy cough, was handing him the most honored herb of her whole people, the tall green gift of the cold mountain, the angelica of the north. The 19th remedy is this: the birch tree that gave the north its tar and its splints and its bark for 100 uses, that pale, slender white barked tree that stood in great forests across the whole northern land, gave it also a medicine, for the people of the north drank the tea of the young birch leaves, and, in the spring, the thin, sweet, clear sap that rises in the birch when the winter at last begins to break. The birch leaf tea was given to clear the body and to ease the water and to help the joints, a gentle cleansing drink for the worn body at the end of the long winter. And the birch sap, gathered from the tree in the brief weeks of the spring rising by cutting a small hole and catching the slow clear drip, was drunk as a fresh living tonic, the first sweet drink of the new year, a sign that the long dark was ending. There is something deeply fitting in the birch, sap drunk in the spring, after the long fast of the winter, the body taking in the first rising of the year, along with the rising of the tree, and the old people of the north felt the goodness of it. Whether or not they could have named the why, the long winter loosening its hold, the sap rising, the light coming back, the first green medicine of the year. The 20th remedy is this: when sickness was in the house, when the air of the longhouse grew thick and close and stale with the breath of the sick and the smoke of the fire and the long shut-up winter, the healers cleansed the air with the smoke of the juniper, the low dark prickly evergreen shrub of the northern hillside, and the open heath that grows in low dark spreading mounds among the rocks, whose blue-black berries and whose sharp green needles, cast upon the hot embers, give off a clean, sharp, resinous smoke, sweet and bracing, that the people held to drive out the sickness and to purify the close and tainted air. They would burn a handful of the juniper in the sick room to cleanse it, the clean smoke filling the room, and they would brew the small dark berries too, crushed in water or in oil, into a warming drink for the chest and the water and the gut. The juniper was a herb of cleansing and of warding, used to smoke a house after sickness or after death, to drive the bad air and the unseen sickness out before the fresh and the living came back in. We know now that the clean resinous smoke of the juniper does carry a true power to clean the air of some of the small creatures of disease. And so the healer smoking out the sick room with juniper, opening the door a crack to let the old air go and the smoke do its work, was once again doing a thing that was both old custom and quiet sense. The 21st remedy is this. The people of the north had a cure for the deep cold, and the fever of the chest that was as much a comfort as a medicine, and it was the sweat house, the small close timber room heated with hot stones, into which water was thrown to fill it with steam, what the far north still knows by its own old name. The sick, or the chilled, or the weary would go into the warm steam and sit until the sweat ran and the body was loosened and the chest was opened, and then, in the boldest and most northern part of the cure, would go straight out into the cold, into the snow, or the cold stream, or the icy sea, and back again into the warmth, and the body, shocked between the great heat and the great cold, came out tingling and cleansed, and somehow eased. It was a thing of cleansing and of comfort, a way to drive the chill out of a body that had been too long in the cold, and a way to open a chest that had grown thick and heavy with the catarrh of the winter. And the people of the north loved it, and it has never left them, the hot room and the cold plunge, from that far age all the way to this one. The 22nd remedy is this. The willow tree that grows along every northern stream and bends its long grey leaves over every still pool, gave the healers of the north a true medicine for fever and for pain. The bark of the willow, peeled and dried and steeped or boiled into a bitter drink. The bitterness of it was hard to take, and they sweetened it with honey where they could. But they gave it for the burning fever, and the aching head and the sore joint, and it eased these, truly eased them, more than most of what they had. And here again, as with the meadowsweet, the old healing reached, all unknowing, for the very root of the great modern medicine for fever and pain, for it is from the willow bark, as much as from the meadowsweet, that the substance was first drawn that became the small white tablet of the modern world. Two of the oldest fever cures of the north, the willow by the stream and the meadowsweet in the wet meadow, both held within them the same true gift, and both were used for the same true purpose, 1,000 years before anyone could say what the gift was or why it worked. The 23rd remedy is this. For the cough that comes with the cold, the dry catching cough that keeps a body from its sleep and racks the chest through the long dark hours, the healers of the north reached for the wild thyme, the low creeping aromatic herb of the dry hillside that grows in mats and cushions among the warm stones and over the dry banks, whose tiny leaves, crushed between the fingers, give off a warm and savory scent that seems to hold the heat of the summer sun within it. They gathered it in the warmth of the summer day, when its scent was strongest, and dried it in small bundles, and steeped it in hot water, sometimes with honey stirred in to soften its savour, and gave the warm, fragrant drink to ease the cough, and to loosen the chest, and to warm the body from within. And the one who drank it would breathe the warm, savoury steam of it, as well, the better to loosen the tight and the heavy chest. The thyme was a herb of warmth and of the chest, given for the cough and the cold and the heaviness of the lungs, and there is true virtue in it. For the warm vapour of the thyme does indeed loosen the chest and ease the cough, and the herb itself carries things that help to clean the chest of its sickness. A warm cup of thyme by the fire on a winter night, breathing the savory steam of it, the cough easing, the chest loosening, the body warming, it is a small and homely cure, and a good one, and it has lasted in many a country kitchen from that far age down to this. The 24th remedy is this: the coltsfoot, a low plant of the waste ground, and the bare bank and the broken clay, that puts up its small bright yellow flowers on their scaly stems in the very earliest spring, before ever its leaves come, so that the flower seems to bloom out of the bare cold earth with nothing green about it, and then, when the flower is gone, unfolds its broad soft leaves, shaped like the print of a colt's foot, was the great cough herb of the Old North and the Old World both. It was one of the first signs of the breaking of the winter, the bright yellow flower on the bare bank, and so it carried with it a little of the gladness of the returning light. The dried leaves were sometimes burned, and the smoke of them breathed in to ease a tight chest, a thing that seems strange to us now. The smoke breathed in to ease the breath, and the leaves and the flowers were steeped in hot water and drunk for the cough and the cold. So bound up was the colt's foot with the easing of the cough that its old learned name means simply the cough dispeller, the herb that drives the cough away. It was one of the gentle, reliable herbs of the chest, reached for season after season for the winter cough, and the old healer kept a good store of the dried leaf in her box against the long coughing nights of the cold months. The 25th remedy is this: the mullein, a tall plant with great soft woolly grey leaves, so soft to the touch that the children called it by names that meant flannel and blanket, and a high spike of small yellow flowers that stands up straight as a candle from the dry bank, and the old wall, was another of the great chest herbs of the old healing. Its soft leaves and its flowers were gathered and dried and steeped in hot water, and the warm drink was strained with great care through a cloth. For the fine hairs of the soft leaves must be kept out of the drink, lest they tickle and scratch the throat, and the strained warm drink was given for the cough and the chest and the lungs, and it eased the rawness of a sore throat and a coughing chest, for the mullein carries within it a soft soothing substance that coats and calms the raw places. The great soft leaves had other uses too, soft enough to line a shoe or to serve in a pinch as a soft cloth, but it was for the chest above all that the healers grew and gathered it, and a warm cup of mullein, gentle and soothing, was given to a child kept awake by the rawness of a cough, to soothe the chest and let it sleep. The 26th remedy is this: in the far north, in the long darkness of the deep winter, when the snow lay deep over the frozen ground, and there was no fresh green thing to be had for months on end, nothing growing, nothing new, only the stored and the dried and the salted, there crept in slowly upon the people the wasting sickness of the long want of greenness, the loosening of the teeth in the gums, and the bleeding of the gums, and the slow swelling weariness of the limbs, the great heavy tiredness that the sailors of later ages, on their long voyages far from any fresh thing, would come to know and to dread under the name of the scurvy. The people of the north fought it, without knowing its name or its cause, by holding back from the autumn the things that kept their goodness through the winter, and by reaching, in the cold months, for what fresh sharp green things they could find. They gathered and stored the berries of the autumn, the lingonberry, and the cranberry, and the wonderful golden cloudberry of the northern bog. And they kept the sharp green leaves of the scurvy, grass and the horseradish, all of which, though they could not have said it, held within them the very thing the winter body was starving for. The cloudberry above all, that grows on the high cold bog and ripens to a soft amber gold, was treasured and stored, and it kept its goodness through the winter. And the people who ate it through the dark months kept their teeth and their strength where others lost them. It is a quiet triumph of the old watching, this, that a people who knew nothing of why the winter wasted them should have learned, by long and patient noticing exactly which of the wild things would keep that wasting away. The 27th remedy is this: for the feverish and the weak, when the body would take little food and turned away from all but the lightest, the healers of the north gave the warm way. The thin sour liquid that is left when the milk is made into cheese or curds, the pale watery drink that ran off in the dairy, and that the people knew well from their daily work, warmed gently at the fire, and given by the spoonful to the one who could keep down little else. It was a gentle, nourishing drink for a body too sick for solid food, light and sour and warming, easy on the most delicate stomach, and yet carrying some quiet goodness into the weak and wasting body, and it was given freely to the sick and the feverish through their long days in the bed, furs, spooned slowly and patiently by the one who tended them. The people of the north lived close to their cattle, and their sheep and their goats, and the milk and the things made from it. The curds and the whey and the saga were the food of every house, and so the warm whey was always to hand, a sick-room food that cost nothing and sat lightly on the weakest stomach, spooned slowly to a feverish child by the patient hand of the healer in the long firelit night. The 28th remedy is this: for the catarrh of the head and the chest, the streaming cold and the blocked head, and the thick cough of the winter, the healers made a strong broth of onions and garlic, the bulbs peeled and chopped and dropped into the pot, and simmered long and slow in water, or in the broth of meat, until the whole house filled with the strong, savory smell of it, and gave it hot to the sick to drink, a steaming bowl pressed into the cold hands of the shivering and the sniffling. The sharp, pungent vapor of the onion and the garlic, breathed in with the steam, cleared the blocked head, and the hot broth warmed and comforted the chilled body from within. And the goodness of the onion and the garlic, which we now know to be real, did its quiet work against the sickness. It is a cure that has never gone away, the hot onion and garlic broth for a heavy cold, found in the kitchens of half the world. And the people of the north had it too, the steaming bowl of strong onion broth pressed into the hands of a shivering, sniffling soul. The steam cleared the head, the broth warmed the bones, and slowly, over the long day by the fire, the cold loosened its grip. The 29th remedy is this: the elder, the small spreading tree of the hedge, and the waste ground and the damp corner of the yard, that hangs out its great flat, creamy heads of small sweet scented flowers in the early summer, so that the whole tree seems to foam with them, and its heavy drooping bunches of small dark purple black berries in the autumn, was one of the great fever and chest herbs of the old north. The flowers were gathered in their brief flowering and dried, and steeped in hot water and drunk, to bring on a gentle sweat, and so to break a fever. and the dark berries were gathered in the autumn and cooked down into a dark sweet syrup and given for the cough and the cold and the heaviness of the chest. Both the flower and the berry had their place in the healer's box. The flower for the fever and the sweating out of a sickness, the berry for the chest and the long winter cold. And there is true and tested virtue in them, for the elder does indeed help the body to fight off the sicknesses of the chest. The elder tree was treated with a certain respect too, half medicine and half something older, a tree it was thought unlucky to cut without asking its leave. The white-flowered tree of the hedge that gave both the sweating cure for the fever and the dark sweet syrup for the cough. The 30th remedy is this. We have met the mugwort already among the herbs of the wound, but it had a use in the cold months too. For the people of the north burned it to cleanse, and to purify the close air of the sickly longhouse. The bundle of dried mugwort smouldering slow upon a stone to fill the room with its dry grey smoke. The mugwort was an old and honoured herb, the chief of the 9 sacred herbs of the oldest northern charm, named there as the oldest of herbs, the one that has power against the 3 and the 30, against poison and against the flying things of sickness. It was hung in the house and burned in the house and worn upon the body, half medicine and half ward. A herb that stood on the very border between the healing of the herb and the healing of the charm. We will come, at the end of our long evening, to that strange border country where the herb and the charm ran together, and the mugwort is one of the herbs that lives in both lands at once, the dry grey roadside plant that was at once a real medicine for the body and a real protection in the old mind against the unseen darts of the dark. The 31st remedy is this. When the chest was tight and the cough was deep and the cold had settled into the very bones, the healers of the north rubbed the chest and the back with fat, with the rendered fat of the bear or the goose or the seal, warmed soft at the fire and rubbed well and long into the skin over the lungs, and sometimes the warming aromatic herbs, the thyme or the juniper or others, were warmed into the fat first to give it more virtue and a clean sharp scent. The warmth of the rubbing, and the warmth of the fat, and the long slow working of the hand over the chest, altogether eased the tight chest and warmed the chilled body. And the slow soaking of the fat into the skin was held to draw the cold and the sickness out, and to keep the good warmth in. The bear fat above all was prized, the thick fat of the great winter sleeper, and a pot of it was kept in many a house against the coughs and the chills of the cold months. It is the old root of the warming chest rub, the thing the grandmother still rubs upon the chest of the coughing child. Only theirs was the fat of the bear and the goose, where ours is a thing from a jar, and the kind warm hand rubbing it in, and the easing of the tight chest, are exactly the same across the 1,000 years. The 32nd remedy is this, and with it we will leave the fevers of the cold months and turn to the troubles of the stomach. The plainest cure of all for the cold of the winter, the cure beneath all the other cures, was simply warmth, and the people of the north, who lived in the coldest of all the inhabited lands, were the great masters of warmth, of the making of it, and the keeping of it, and the careful sharing of it through the long dark months. They heated stones in the fire and wrapped them in cloth, and laid them in the bed, first to warm the cold sleeping place before a sick or a chilled body lay down in it. and they slept close, many to a bench, the whole household together, under their shared furs, the young and the old, and the sick among the well, so that the warmth of the many kept the cold from the one. There was healing in this simple closeness, that we, who sleep each alone in our cold separate rooms, have perhaps half forgotten the warmth of the shared bed, the warm stone at the feet, the breathing of the others all around in the dark, the sick child laid in the warmest place, at the very heart of the sleeping household, wrapped warm and held close and kept by the plain animal warmth of its own people, on the right side of the long cold winter night. Now, before we go on, let us pause once more and draw breath. We have closed the wounds, and we have eased the fevers, and outside the storm still blows, and the night is still long, and the fire still glows red down the center of the hall. But there is another whole country of small sicknesses that the healer must tend. The everyday troubles of the body that have nothing to do with the sword or the fever, the troubles of the stomach, the sour belly and the gripe and the loose bowel and the colicky child, the small miseries that keep no one from living but keep many from their comfort. And the North had its remedies for all of these too, its warm seeds and its sour milks and its bitter roots, the gentle everyday medicine of the gut. So let us turn now, slowly, to the quieting of the belly, the homeliest and the most human of all the healer's arts. The 33rd remedy is this. We come again to the angelica, that great honored herb of the North, for beyond its use for the chest and the chill it was, above all, a herb of the stomach. The seeds and the dried stem and the root were chewed or brewed for the wind, and the gripe, and the heaviness of the belly after a hard meal. And the warm aromatic virtue of the angelica settled the stomach and eased the trapped wind and warmed the cold gut. It was the chief stomach herb of the North, reached for after the great winter feasts of meat, and all when the belly was overladen, and given to the one whose stomach was cold and weak and slow. The whole plant, root and stem and seed, was aromatic and warming and good for the gut, and the old healer kept all of it in her box, and a piece of the candied stem of the angelica was both a sweet and a medicine at once, the children glad of the sweetness, and the healer glad of the good it did the stomach. The 34th remedy is this. The caraway, the small curved aromatic seed that we still scatter on bread and cake, with its warm, sharp savor that is a little like aniseed and a little all its own, was chewed by the people of the North after a heavy meal to settle the stomach and to ease the wind and to sweeten the breath. It grew well enough in the North to be gathered and kept in good store, the seed ripening on the tall hollow stems in the late summer, and shaken out and dried and laid by in a little pouch in the cupboard against the long winter of heavy meals. The warm savory seed, slowly chewed, eased the griping of an overfull belly and brought up the trapped wind that lay heavy after a great feast of meat and all. And it was so good and so reliable for this, that the chewing of the caraway after meat has lasted in many lands, from that far age all the way down to this. It was a small homely comfort, the caraway, kept in a little pouch and chewed at the end of the meal, a few of the small curved seeds upon the tongue, the warm savor of them, the slow easing of the heavy belly, a thing so small that no one thought to write it down, and yet a thing done quietly, after meals, in the long houses of the North for longer than anyone could remember. The 35th remedy is this. The mint, in its many wild northern kinds, the horse mint and the water mint, that grow in the wet ground by the streams, was the great cooling stomach herb of the old healing, given for the sore belly and the queasy stomach and the heaviness after eating. The leaves were gathered in the summer along the margins of the slow streams, where the mint grows thick and green with its feet half in the cool water, and they were hung in small bundles in the warm smoke of the rafters to dry, and a handful was broken off through the winter as it was needed. They were steeped in hot water, and the warm, fragrant drink given to settle the stomach and calm the gut and freshen the mouth. And the cool, sweet scent of the mint was a comfort in itself to a body that felt thick and ill. We know now what the old healers knew by long watching, that the mint truly does calm and settle the stomach and ease the griping of the gut. And the warm cup of mint after a heavy meal, or at the end of a long day, has come down to us almost unchanged across the centuries. There is a quiet detail in it that lingers, the way the dried mint, crushed between the fingers before it went into the pot, gave back for a moment. In the dead of the dark winter, the green cool breath of the summer streamside where it grew, so that the whole long warm room, for a moment, smelled of the green running water and the soft summer mud. A handful of the wild mint from the streamside, steeped warm by the fire, the cool sweet steam of it, the slow settling of the troubled belly. It is one of the gentlest of all the old cures, and one of the truest. The 36th remedy is this. The people of the north lived close to their cattle, and their sheep and their goats, and the soured milk was the food of every day, and it was also a medicine of the gut. They made a thick soured milk, the food the far north still keeps under its old name, the skyer, straining the soured milk through a cloth until it grew thick and smooth and faintly sweet beneath its sourness, and they kept it cooled in the dark of the store, in great wooden vessels, where it would keep through much of the winter. They drank the thin sour way too, the pale liquid that ran off in the making, and these soured milk foods were given to settle and to strengthen the gut and to ease the looseness of the bowel. We understand now, in our own age, that there is a true wisdom in this, that the soured milk carries within it the small good creatures that help the gut to do its work, and that crowd out the bad ones. And so the bowl of sour skyer was not only a food but a quiet medicine for the belly. The people of the north did not know any of that. They knew only that the soured milk sat well and did good, that a sour belly was eased by a bowl of skyer, that the thin sour way settled the gut, and that the milk of their beasts, soured and thickened in the cool of the dairy, was both their daily food and one of their daily medicines. The 37th remedy is this. For the colicky infant, the small one crying and drawing up its little legs with the griping of the wind in its belly, the healers of the north made a warm gentle water of the soothing seeds, of the cumin, or the dill, or the fennel, or the caraway, the same warm aromatic seeds they chewed themselves after a heavy meal. A small pinch of the seeds was dropped into a cup, and a little hot water from the soapstone pot poured over them, and the cup set by the embers to steep, and to cool to no more than the warmth of milk, and then strained, and given a few drops at a time, on the tip of a clean finger or a small horn spoon, to the crying child. It was steeped gentle and weak, far weaker than the drink an old body would take, and given a little at a time to the crying child. The warm, aromatic water eased the trapped wind and quieted the griping of the small belly, and the crying softened and stopped, and the small one slept. It is the very same gentle cure that is given to the Kaliki infant in many a country still, the warm water of the soothing seeds, and the people of the north had it. And a mother walking the floor of the longhouse, in the dark with a crying, griping infant, would carry it to the healer by the fire, who would warm a little of the dill water and give it on a spoon, and the small belly would ease, and the small cries would soften into sleep. The 38th remedy is this. For the loose bowel, the flux of the belly that wastes and weakens a body, the healers of the north reached for the bilberry, the small dark blue berry of the northern moor, the one that stains the fingers and the mouth, a deep blue purple when it is gathered in the late summer on the high open ground, where the low bushes spread for miles over the heath, and the people went out in the brief warm weeks with their baskets and their fingers stained blue to gather them. The berries were dried in the sun and the warm smoke and kept through the winter, and the dried berries were steeped in hot water or simply eaten for the loose bowel. And they bound and settled the gut and stopped the wasting flux, for the bilberry carries within it a true power to draw the gut together and stop the looseness. The fresh berries, eaten in their season, were a sweet delight, gathered by the basketful on the open moor in the brief northern summer, but it was the dried berry, kept in the box against the need. That was the medicine, given for the flux and the loose belly, a sweet and gentle cure for one of the commonest and most wearying of the troubles of the gut. The 39th remedy is this. For the belly that was bound and would not move, the costive stomach that is the opposite trouble to the flux, and a trouble bred by the long winter diet of dried and salted things with little green among them, the healers reached for the purging roots, and chief among them was the root of the dock and of the wild rhubarb of the north, the monk's rhubarb as the old world came to call it, a tall broad-leafed plant of the damp ground, whose thick yellow root, dug and dried and ground, and given in a careful and a measured dose, gently moved the bound bowel and cleared the heavy clogged belly. It was a strong medicine, to be given with a careful hand, too much being as bad as too little, but in the right small dose it gently and surely did its work, and the bound and heavy belly was eased. The purging of the bound bowel was one of the regular arts of the old healing, for the people held that a clean and open belly was the root of health, and that a bound and clogged one bred sickness. And so the careful dose of the rhubarb root, the gentle clearing of the heavy gut, had its honored place among the cures of the stomach. The 40th remedy is this. For the worms that troubled the gut, above all the gut of children, a common and a wearying affliction in any age that lives close to its beasts and its earth, the healers of the north reached for the tansy, the tall herb with its flat heads of hard round yellow flowers like small buttons, and its strong bitter scent. The bitter herb was steeped and given to drive the worms from the gut, and it worked, for the tansy carries within it a true power against the worms, though it is a strong herb, and a dangerous one in too great a dose, and was given with a careful hand. The driving of the worms was a regular need in the Old North, especially among the children, and the bitter tansy was the chief of the herbs they used for it. Given in a careful measured dose to clear, the gut of its small unwelcome guests. The bitter draught hard to swallow, but quick in its work. The 41st remedy is this. For the weak appetite and the cold, sluggish stomach that would take no food, the healers of the north brewed the wormwood, the silver-grey-leafed herb, whose very name has become a byword for bitterness. So bitter is it upon the tongue. They steeped it, often in all, into a bitter draught, and gave it before meat to wake the sleeping appetite, and to warm and stir the cold, weak stomach. For the old healers had found, by long watching, that a bitter taste upon the tongue wakes the hunger and stirs the stomach to its work. We know now that this is true, that the bitter herbs do indeed wake the appetite and stir the juices of the gut, and the wormwood was the bitterest and the strongest of them, the great waker of the appetite, brewed into a bitter ale and given to the one whose stomach had grown cold and slow and would take no joy in food. It was a hard draught to drink, the bitter wormwood ale, but it did its work, and the appetite woke, and the food went down, and the weak body began to mend. The 42nd remedy is this. When a body had eaten or drunk something bad, when the belly griped and turned with a poison or a foulness in it, the healers of the north reached for the plainest thing of all, the charcoal of their own hearth, the black burned wood of the fire, ground fine and given in water to be swallowed down. The charcoal, taken into the troubled belly, drew the badness and the poison into itself, as charcoal draws and holds whatever comes near it, and carried it harmlessly out of the body, and the griping eased. It is a true and attested cure. The swallowed charcoal for the poisoned belly, still used in the medicine of our own day for the very same purpose, and the people of the north had it, ground from the black embers of their own fire. The commonest thing in the house turned, in the moment of need, into a true medicine for the poisoned gut. There is a fitness in it, that the same fire that warmed the house and cooked the food should also, in its cold black ashes, hold a cure for the belly that the food had wronged. The 43rd remedy is this. The fennel, the tall feathery herb with its soft green threads of leaf and its warm sweet seed that tastes of aniseed, was a great comfort to the stomach of the old north, as it has been a comfort to stomachs everywhere and in every age. It did not grow easily in the cold of the far north, and so the seed was a thing often traded up from the warmer south, carried in small precious quantities and kept carefully in a little pouch, a small luxury of the cupboard. The warm sweet seeds were chewed slowly after meat to settle the belly and ease the trapped wind and sweeten the breath, and a warm water made of them, the seed steeped and the drink strained, was given for the heaviness of the stomach and, weak and gentle, for the colic of the infant. The fennel was a herb of warmth and of comfort and of digestion, growing tall and golden and feathery in the warmer gardens of the south of the northern lands, and traded north, where it would not grow. Prized for the easing, it brought to the overladen belly a few of the warm sweet seeds, chewed slowly at the end of a heavy meal, the soft aniseed taste of them, the slow easing of the full belly. It is a small comfort, and an old one. And the people of the north knew it, and were glad of it, after the great meals of the long winter nights. The 44th remedy is this. For the flux and the loose belly, beside the bilberry, the healers of the north reached for the sloe, the small hard black bitter fruit of the blackthorn, that grows in the thickest and most thorny of the hedges, the tree that flowers white and lovely in the very early spring before its leaves, and then guards its small fruit all summer behind its long, cruel thorns, and ripens to a deep blue-black in the late autumn, after the first frost has touched it, so sharp and so binding upon the tongue, that it draws the very mouth together and sets the teeth on edge. The sloe and its juice were given to bind the loose bowel, and to stop the flux, for the same sharp drawing virtue that puckers the mouth draws the gut together too, and stops the wasting looseness. It was a hard, sharp medicine, the sloe, far too sharp to be a pleasure to eat, and it was used as a medicine and not as a food, given for the flux when the bilberry was wanting. The small black bitter fruit of the thorny hedge turned to the healing of the loosened gut. There is something fitting in it, that so harsh and unwelcoming a fruit, hidden among the cruelest thorns of the whole hedge, should yet hold within its bitterness a true and useful cure. The 45th remedy is this: when a body had swallowed a poison, when something truly bad had gone down and lay working in the stomach, the healers of the north did the plain and the urgent thing. They brought it back up again, giving warm salt water or some other thing to make the stomach empty itself of the poison before it could do its worst. It was a rough cure and an unpleasant one, but it was a sound one, for the quickest way to be rid of a poison newly swallowed is to bring it up before the body takes it in. And the old healers knew this, and did it without hesitation when the need was plain. The warm salt water swallowed down, the stomach emptied, the poison cast out. It was one of the oldest of all the cures of the gut, the plain emptying of the poisoned stomach, done by the firelight with a steady hand and a basin, and it saved, no doubt, more than a few who would otherwise have died of what they had unwisely eaten. The 46th remedy is this: for the plain queasiness of the stomach, the nausea, and the turning of the belly that comes from a small upset or a long voyage upon the heaving sea, the healers of the north gave the simplest of comforts: warm water with honey, or a little honey upon the tongue, the sweetness settling and soothing the troubled stomach. It was a gentle cure for a gentle trouble, the warm honey water given to the one who felt sick and could keep nothing else down, the sweetness easing the queasiness, the warmth comforting the belly. The people of the north, a seafaring people, knew the sickness of the having sea, as few peoples have known it, the long misery of the rolling ship, and the warm honey water, or a piece of dry bread, or a few of the warm settling seeds, was the comfort they reached for, the small homely easing of the seasick and the queasy, given by one who had felt the same misery often enough to know how little there was to be done but to wait and to sip the warm sweet water and to be kind. The 47th remedy is this: the food of the sick room, the thing given to the one too weak and too ill for any solid meat, was, above all things, the barley gruel, the thin soft porridge of barley, the great grain of the north, boiled long and slow at the edge of the embers in water or in milk until it was a smooth warm pap, gentle and nourishing and easy upon even the weakest and most delicate of stomachs. It was the great sickroom food of the Old North and of much of the Old World besides, given to the feverish and the wounded and the new mother and the old and failing. A little goodness carried gently into a body too weak to take its ordinary food. The healer would set the barley to soak and then to simmer slow at the edge of the hearth, and would spoon the warm, smooth gruel, perhaps with a little honey or a little butter melted into it, to the one in the bed, furs, slowly, patiently, a spoonful at a time. It was not a medicine exactly, and yet it was one of the most important things the healer did, for a sick body must be fed if it is to mend, and the warm barley gruel was the gentle bridge by which the sick were carried, spoonful by patient spoonful, from the edge of their sickness back toward the table of the living. The 48th remedy is this, and with it we will leave the troubles of the stomach and turn to the bringing of children into the world. The dandelion, the bright yellow flower that every child knows, that turns to a soft grey clock of seeds and is blown away upon the wind, was a true and useful medicine of the Old North, given for the liver and for the easing of the water. The bitter leaf was eaten as a spring green, and the root was dried and brewed, and both were given to wake a sluggish liver, and to ease the body of its water, to make the kidneys do their work and clear the body of what it should let go. The dandelion is a herb of cleansing, given at the turn of the year to clear the winter from the body, and given through the year for the heavy liver and the held water, and its very names in the old tongues often point to its power upon the water. It is one of those plants that we now think a weed and grub up from our lawns, that the old healers knew for a true and a useful medicine. The bright common flower of every field, and verge holding within its bitter leaf, and its long root a real and gentle healing for the body. Now, before we go on, let us pause once more, here in the warmth, and listen to the wind. We have closed the wounds and eased the fevers and quieted the bellies, and the night is wearing on, and the storm still blows, and the fire has burned a little lower in the long hearth, so that the old healer reaches out now and lays another length of wood upon it, and the flames stand up bright for a while and then settle again to their low red glow. Notice, if you will, how the work of the healer has changed its color gently as we have moved along, from the hard red work of the battlefield, the closing of the sword cut, and the searing of the bleeding vessel, toward the softer and the homelier arts, the warm brew for the chest, the warm seed for the colicky child, the sour milk for the troubled gut, and now softer still, toward the most tender of all her labors. For there is no healing older or more needful than the one we come to now, for it is the healing that stands at the very gate of life itself, at the bringing of the new child into the world, and the tending of the women who bear them. It was in the Old North almost wholly the work of women, this most dangerous and most hopeful of all the labors of the body, and around it gathered the deepest of the old skills and the oldest of the old beliefs, the herb and the hand and the carved rune, and the call upon the watching spirits, all woven together as nowhere else. Picture, if you will, the birth chamber of the old longhouse, a corner curtained off with a hung cloth, a small fire of its own, the women of the household gathered close in the firelit warmth, the older ones who had done this many times, and the younger ones learning by watching, the whole quiet female world of the birth drawn in close about the one in her labor, the men shut out, the door closed, the herbs ready and the warm broth steaming, and the old signs carved and the old names spoken, all the long woven art of the women brought to bear at once upon the bringing of the new life safe into the cold, bright world. So let us turn now, gently, into that curtained firelit corner, to the birth runes and the women's healing, The 49th remedy is this, and it is a strange and a beautiful one, half medicine and half something far older, the birth runes. The carved signs that the women of the north made to help a child safely into the world. There is an old poem of the north, set down in the great gathering of the oldest northern verse, in which a wise woman teaches a hero the many uses of the runes, and among them she names the birth runes, the signs to be carved to help a woman in her labor, and she says that they must be cut upon the palms of the hands and clasped about the joints, and that the helping spirits of the family, the women spirits we call the Disa, must be called upon for aid. So the runes were carved upon the hand of the laboring woman, or upon a thing she held, and the old signs and the old call upon the watching spirits were made over her in her hour of danger and of hope. It was not medicine as we would call it, and yet it was medicine to them, a true and a needed part of the tending of the birth, the carved sign and the spoken call standing beside the warm broth and the skilled hand. All of them together meant to bring the mother and the child safe through the dark gate of the birth into the light of the living world. The 50th remedy is this. Among the herbs the women of the north reached for in the matters of the womb, one of the gentlest and most trusted was the lady's mantle, the low soft green plant with its broad folded pleated leaves, scalloped round the edge like a small green cloak, that hold, in the cool of the morning, a single round bright drop of dew at the very center of each leaf, perfect and trembling, like a small clear jewel set in green, so that the people of the old world thought the gathered dew of it a thing of power and a wonder. The leaves were gathered and dried, and steeped into a drink, and given for the troubles of the womb, and the easing of the flow, and the strengthening of the woman after her childbearing, and its old names in many tongues tie it to women, and to the womb, and to the bearing of children. It was a women's herb above all, kept and used by the women themselves, passed from the older to the younger as part of the deep women's knowledge of their own bodies that ran, quiet and unrecorded, alongside the louder world of the men and their feuds and their voyages. The lady's mantle, with its single bright drop of dew held in its folded green leaf, was one of the gentle keepers of that quiet women's healing. The 51st remedy is this: to ease the labor of the birth and to strengthen the womb for its great work, the women of the north gave the tea of the raspberry leaf, the leaf of the wild raspberry that grows in the clearings and the wood edges and the burned over ground, dried and steeped into a warm fragrant drink and given in the last weeks before the birth and through the labor itself. The leaves were gathered in the early summer before the fruit came, and dried with care and kept, and when a woman of the house grew near her time, the older women would begin to give her the warm cup of the raspberry leaf, day by day, to ready her body for the labor ahead. The raspberry leaf was held to make the labor easier, and the womb stronger, and the birth swifter and safer. And so trusted has it been, across so many ages and so many lands, that it is given for the very same purpose still. The dried raspberry leaf, steeped warm, and drunk by the woman near her time. It was one of the central herbs of the women's healing of the north, kept against the births of the house, given to the woman as her time drew near, the warm cup of raspberry leaf by the fire, the quiet preparing of the body for the great labor ahead. The old gentle help passed from mother to daughter down the long line of the bearing women. The 52nd remedy is this. The motherwort, a tall herb of the hedge and the waste ground with its deeply cut leaves and its small pink-purple flowers clustered in tight whorls up the square stem, whose very name declares its use, the herb of the mother, was given to the women of the north for the heart and for the womb, to steady the one and to ease the other. It was a bitter herb, hard upon the tongue, and it was steeped into a bitter drink, sweetened with honey, where there was honey to be had, and given to calm the racing heart and the anxious spirit, and to ease the troubles of the womb, and to strengthen the woman in her childbearing, and its old name, the mother's herb, the herb that is a mother to the mothers, says all that the old healers meant by it. It was a women's herb above all, like the lady's mantle and the raspberry leaf, part of the deep, quiet store of the women's own healing, and it was given to the woman whose heart was troubled and whose womb was weak, to steady the beating of the one and to comfort and strengthen the other, the bitter, warm cup of motherwort, the herb that mothers the mothers, given by the older women to the younger in the close women's world of the birth chamber. The 53rd remedy is this. The birth itself, in the Old North, was not the lying down that we have made it, but a thing of motion and of upright posture. The woman kneeling or squatting or held upright by the other women, so that the weight of the child and the pull of the earth itself helped to bring it down and out. The women of the household gathered about her, the skilled older women who had borne children themselves and tended many births, and they held her and supported her and walked with her and knelt with her, and the birth was a thing done upright and in motion, with the women all about, in the way that the body itself seems to want, the way that helps the child to come. There were no men in that room, and no learned physician with his theories, only the women, the ones who knew, gathered close in the firelit dark about the one in her labor, holding her, breathing with her, helping her in the oldest and the most needful of all the works of women, the bringing of the new life into the cold, bright world. The 54th remedy is this. Around the birth there gathered, in the Old North, the call upon the unseen helpers, upon the goddesses and the spirits who were thought to watch over the bearing of children. They called upon Frigg, the great mother goddess, the wife of the chief of the gods, who was held to watch over marriage and the home and the bearing of children, and they called above all upon the Deesir, the women spirits of the family line, the ancestral mothers who watched over the births of their own descendants down the generations. There was a great feast and offering of the autumn, the Disablot, the offering to the Deesir, and these watching women, spirits, were called upon in the hour of the birth to lend their aid and their protection to the laboring woman and the coming child. It was belief, not medicine, and yet to the women of the north it was as real and as needful as the warm broth and the raspberry leaf, the call upon the watching mothers of the line, the asking of the unseen women who had borne and watched over the family before, to gather close and help bring the newest of their blood safely into the light. The 55th remedy is this. After the birth, when the great danger was not yet past, when the bleeding that follows the birth might still take the life of the new mother in a single quiet hour, the women of the north reached for the shepherd's purse, the low common weed of the field and the path, named for its small flat heart shaped seed pods that hang down the stem and look, to the country eye, like the little purses the old shepherds carried at their belts. The herb was dried and kept ready, for this was a need that came without warning and would not wait. And it was steeped quickly into a strong drink and given to the new mother to stop and to slow the bleeding after the birth, and it is a true and attested staunch of blood, the shepherd's purse, holding within it a real power to slow the red flow, used for the bleeding of the new mother and for other bleedings besides. It was one of the quiet life-saving herbs of the women's healing, kept against the moment of greatest danger, the moment when a birth that had gone well might still turn, in an hour, to a death, and the steady older women, watching, with the dried shepherd's purse ready to hand, knew well how much might hang upon that one common roadside weed. The 56th remedy is this. When the birth was over and the child was come and safe, and the worst of the danger past, the care of the women turned to the bringing back of the new mother's strength, for she was worn and emptied, and trembling with her great labor, drained to the very bottom of her body's strength, and the women fed her, and fed her richly, with warm rich broths of meat and bone simmered long, with butter and cream, and the good fat nourishing foods of the north, with porridge sweetened with honey, with everything that might build her wasted body back, and bring the milk in full and strong for the child at her breast. The new mother was tended and fed, and kept warm and let rest, while the other women took the work of the house, and the care of the child from her hands for a while, that she might mend. It was a kind and a wise custom, the resting and the rich feeding of the new mother. Found in many of the old peoples, the understanding that a woman who has just done the hardest work the body can do must be let rest and be richly fed if she is to come back to her full strength. And the women of the north did it well, gathering close about the new mother in the warm firelit longhouse, feeding her the warm broth and the rich butter, taking her labors from her, letting her lie warm and rest and slowly mend. The 57th remedy is this. We come once more to the mugwort, that old honored herb that we have met among the wounds and among the smokes of the cold months, for it was, above all its other uses, a herb of women and of the womb. So much so that one of its old names ties it to the very word for the womb itself, the herb of the mother, the woman's herb. It was steeped into a drink and given to ease the troubles of the womb and the pains of the women's months, and to help in the matters of childbearing. And it was hung in the birth chamber and burned there upon the embers and laid beneath the woman in her labor, half medicine and half ward, the oldest of herbs called upon to guard the oldest of women's labors, the dry grey-green bundle smouldering on a stone in the curtained corner while the women worked. The mugwort was a herb that stood in many worlds at once, the herb of the wound, and the herb of the smoke, and the herb of the womb, and the herb of the dream, the great old roadside plant that the people of the north honored above almost all the wild herbs of their land, and in the birth chamber it took its place among the women's herbs, the eldest of herbs called to watch over the eldest of works. The 58th remedy is this. The women of the north had their herbs to bring on the slow milk when it would not come for the new child, and to ease the pains of the breast, and to help the body do what it must after the birth, and these were given with a careful and a knowing hand, for some of the herbs of the womb, and the milk was strong, and some were dangerous, and the women who used them held a deep and careful knowledge of how much was help and how much was harm. They knew the herbs that brought the milk and the herbs that dried it, the herbs that eased the after pains of the womb, and the herbs that must never be given to a woman with child for fear of what they might do. And all of this was held in the careful memory of the older women and passed on by them with all the warnings that went with it. It was a knowledge held close and used with care. The women's knowledge of the strong herbs of the womb, for these were the herbs that walked the narrow line between the medicine and the harm, and the women who kept that knowledge kept it carefully, and passed it on carefully, and used it carefully, knowing well on which side of that narrow line a life might fall. The 59th remedy is this. Around the birth the women of the north hung amulets and charms for protection, and chief among them was amber, the warm golden stone that is the hardened resin of ancient trees, washed up along the shores of the northern seas, that the people of the north gathered and prized and carried far. Amber beads have come up in great number from the old graves of the north, and they were worn as ornament and as protection both, and the warm golden stone was held to have a power to guard and to heal, and was hung about the necks of children, and worn by women in childbed as a ward against harm. There were birthing stones too, certain stones held to ease the birth, worn or held by the labouring woman, and the amber above all, the warm light golden stone that seemed itself almost alive, holding sometimes within it a small ancient insect caught and kept forever, was hung close to the mother and the child as a guard against the unseen dangers of the birth. It was belief, not medicine, and yet the warm familiar weight of the amber, the soft golden glow of it in the firelight, surely brought its own true comfort to the frightened woman in her hour, and comfort, too, is a kind of healing. The 60th remedy is this. At the very heart of all the women's healing of the birth stood not a herb or a charm or a stone, but a pair of skilled and steady hands, the hands of the older woman who knew how to manage a birth, the one we would call the midwife, though the north had its own old words for her. She knew how to wait and how to help and how to hurry nothing, and she knew, above all, the hardest and the most needed skill of all, how to turn a child that lay wrong in the womb, that came not head first, as it should, but crosswise, or feet first, a thing that without her skill would very often have killed both the mother and the child. With her knowing hands she could sometimes turn the child to its right way, and so save them both, and this skill, held in the hands and passed from hand to hand across the generations, was perhaps the single most life-saving art in all the women's healing of the north. The skilled hands of the older woman, calm and sure in the firelit dark of the birth chamber, turning the child that lay wrong, easing it gently to its right way, bringing it down and out into the waiting world. This was the true heart of it, the hand that knew the oldest medicine there is. The 61st remedy is this. After the birth, the women cleansed and comforted the new mother with the warmth of the steam and the bath, with the warm cleansing herbs, and the warm water and the steam of the heated stones, easing her worn and strained body, and cleansing it after the great work of the birth. The new mother was bathed and steamed and warmed and cleansed, the aching body soothed by the heat and the cleansing herbs, the strained muscles loosened, the whole worn body comforted and cared for. It was part of the kind tending of the new mother, this warm cleansing after the birth. The body that had labored so hard let rest now in the warmth and the steam, soothed and cleansed and cared for by the other women, and there was healing in it, in the warmth and the cleansing and the gentle hands, and there was kindness in it too, which is itself a part of healing. The worn and emptied woman wrapped warm and tended close after the hardest labor of her life. The 62nd remedy is this. The new mother, drained of blood by the birth and pale and weak with the loss of it, was fed the iron-rich foods to build her blood back, the dark meats and the bloody broths and the green herbs that the old healers found by long watching to strengthen the pale and bloodless body and bring the color back into the white face. And among the green herbs the chief was the nettle, the stinging nettle of the hedge, and the waster ground, gathered young in the spring with the hands, wrapped in cloth against its sting, and boiled soft until the sting was wholly gone, and then eaten as a green, dark and savory, much like the greens of the garden, or drunk as a broth. The nettle, though they could not have said why, is rich in the very thing the bloodless body needs to make its blood again. And the boiled nettle and the dark meats and the bloody broths were given to the pale, worn new mother to bring the color and the strength back into her. And slowly, over the days of her resting, the blood was built back and the strength returned. It is another of the quiet wisdoms of the old watching, that a people who knew nothing of the blood and how it is made should yet have learned, by long noticing, exactly which foods would build it back in the pale and weakened body, and should have given them just so to the new mother in her need. The 63rd remedy is this. When a mother had no milk or too little, or when a mother died in her childbed, as so many did in that hard age, and left a living child behind her, the women of the north had their answer in the sharing of the milk, in the wet nursing, the giving of one woman's milk to another woman's child. A child whose own mother could not feed, it was given to the breast of another woman of the household, or the wider kin, who had milk to spare, a sister, a cousin, a neighbor, another new mother of the longhouse, and so was kept alive, fed at the breast of one who was not its mother, but who gave it, freely and without grudging, the milk that was its very life. It was a deep and an old kindness, the sharing of the milk, the keeping alive of a motherless child by the milk of another woman, woven into the close kin, bound life of the longhouse, where the children were, in a sense, the children of the whole household, and not of one mother only. A motherless infant in that warm, crowded longhouse was not left to starve while there was milk among the women, but was given freely, from breast to breast, the milk that kept it on the side of the living, and grew up, very often, never quite sure, in that web of shared mothering, exactly which of the warm women of the house had first given it its life. The 64th remedy is this, and with it we will leave the women's healing and turn to the aching of the body. We come once more to the yarrow, that great wound, herb of the warriors, for it had a place in the women's healing too, given for the heavy monthly flow of women, to ease and to staunch it. The same staunching power that closed the warrior's wound turned now to the gentler need of the woman whose monthly flow ran too heavy and too long. The dried grey feathery leaves were steeped in hot water into a faintly bitter tea, sweetened where there was honey to spare, and given warm, a cup in the morning and a cup at the close of the day, and it eased and slowed the heavy flow, and brought the woman some comfort in the days of her trouble. There is a quiet truth woven into this small fact that is worth holding for a moment, that the very same herb a man tucked into his pouch before he sailed to war, the staunch blood of the battlefield, was the herb a woman steeped for herself in the warm dark of her own home. So that the two great bloodlettings of human life, the wound of the man and the monthly tide of the woman, were met, across the whole gulf between them, by the same small grey roadside flower. So the soldier's herb served the women too, in the quiet of their own healing, one more of the herbs that lived a double life, honoured by the warriors on the red field, and used by the women in the warm firelit dark, the same grey feathery herb, the same staunching virtue, turned with an even hand to the hurts of them both. Now, before we go on, let us pause once more, here by the low warm fire, and draw a slow breath. We have closed the wounds of the warriors, and eased the fevers of the cold months, and quieted the troubled bellies, and helped the children into the world, and tended the women who bore them. And the night has worn on, and the storm is blowing itself slowly out, the long roar of the wind a little softer now, the snow no longer flung so hard against the timber wall. The old healer reaches into her box and takes out a small horn box of salve, and turns it slowly in her fingers and sets it ready by the fire, for she knows that the aches of the body do not wait for the morning, and that there is always, in a house full of people who work hard with their hands and their backs through the long cold years, someone whose joint is stiff, whose back is sore, whose tooth has begun, in the dark, its small cruel throbbing, for there remains a whole country of small and wearying hurts that we have not yet touched, the everyday aches of the living body, the stiff and swollen joint, the aching back, the bad tooth that will not let a body sleep, the sore eye, the burned and chapped and cracking skin. These are the small miseries that no one dies of and everyone suffers. And the North had its remedies for all of them, its rubbing fats, and its drawing poultices, and its cooling washes, and its strange, brave cures for the aching tooth. These are the homeliest of all the healer's arts, the ones least spoken of in the great sagas, which had no time, between the feuds and the voyages, for an old man's stiff knee, and yet they were, day in and day out, the greater part of the healer's quiet work, the small constant easing of the small constant aches of the living, aging, hard-worked body. So let us turn now, slowly, to the easing of the aching body. The 65th remedy is this, and it is a strange one, a cure that fights one pain with another, for the deep aching of the stiff cold joint. The joint grown stiff and sore and slow with the cold and the damp, and the long hard years of labour, the people of the North used the sting of the nettle itself, beating or rubbing the fresh green stinging nettle against the aching joint, so that it stung and reddened and burned upon the skin, in the belief, and it seems the true and tested experience, that the fresh sharp burning of the nettle's sting drew the blood up to the place and drove out the deeper, duller, colder ache that lay beneath. It seems a cruel thing to beat an aching joint with stinging nettles, and yet those who used it swore by the relief it brought, the fierce bright sting on the surface somehow easing the deep dull ache below. And there is a logic to it that even the medicine of our own day half understands, that one pain can drive out another, that the body, set to dealing with the bright new sting, lets go for a while of the old deep ache. The old people of the north, their joints stiff with a lifetime of cold and damp and hard work, beat them with the nettle and felt, strangely, the better for it. The 66 remedy is this. For the stiff and aching joint, the cold knee and the sore hip that troubled the old people of the north through the long damp winters, the bodies worn and stiffened by a lifetime of cold and labor in a hard land, the healers rubbed in the warming fats and oils, the bare fat above all, prized as the fat of the great winter sleeper, and kept in a pot against the worst of the cold, and the rendered fat of the goose and the seal, and the dark oil drawn from the birch, all of them warmed soft at the fire and rubbed long and slow into the skin over the aching joint. The warmth of the rubbing eased the stiffness, and the warm fat soaked slowly in and kept the warmth in the joint, and herbs were sometimes warmed into the fat to give it more virtue. It was a comfort as much as a cure, the long, slow, warm rubbing of the aching knee by the fire, the warm bare fat soaking in, the hand of the healer working it slowly into the stiff cold joint, and the old people, their bodies stiff and sore with a lifetime of cold and hard labor, were glad of it, the warmth and the rubbing and the kind slow hand, on the long winter evenings when the cold settled deep into the old bones. The 67th remedy is this. For the aching back, the deep dull ache of the back grown sore with cold and labor, with the lifting of the heavy, and the bending over the hard work of the field and the byre. The people of the north reached for the heat of the hot stone wrapped in cloth, and laid against the aching place the heat of the steam in the sweat house, the heat of the fire itself. They would choose the smooth round stones for it, the ones that took the heat slowly and gave it back slowly, and set them at the edge of the embers to warm through. And when they were hot, but not so hot as to burn, they would wrap them in a fold of cloth or a piece of soft worn leather, and lay them along the aching back, one at the small of the back and one between the shoulders, where the ache lay deepest, and the deep penetrating warmth eased the cramped and knotted muscle and dulled the ache. And the one with the sore back would lie by the fire on the bench, the warm stones laid along the spine, and feel the warmth sink slowly in, and the ache slowly ease, and would sigh, that long slow sigh that the body gives when a deep dull pain begins at last to let go. It is the plainest of cures, the warm stone on the aching back, and one of the best, for the heat does truly ease the knotted muscle, and dull the deep dull ache, and we do the very same thing today. The warm cloth, the warm bottle, the warm pad laid against the sore back, only theirs was the smooth hot stone from the embers, wrapped warm and laid along the back in the firelit dark. The 68th remedy is this, and it is one of the boldest and most dangerous in all the old healing, the cure for the toothache, that small and cruel and sleep-destroying pain. For the worst of the tooth hatchers, the healers of the old north and the old world reached for the henbane, a tall, pale, rank-smelling plant of the waste ground, with dull yellow flowers veined with purple, one of the strong and dangerous plants that can kill as easily as it can cure. The seeds of the henbane, cast upon hot embers or hot stones, give off a smoke that, breathed in carefully over the aching tooth, dulls the pain and brings a kind of dazed relief, And so the sufferer would breathe the henbane smoke over the raging tooth and feel, at last, the cruel pain ease. It was a dangerous cure, the henbane, to be used with the most careful hand, for the same plant that eased the tooth could, in too great a measure, bring the sleep from which there is no waking. And the healers knew this, and used it with great care, and only for the worst, for the toothache that would let a body neither rest nor sleep nor think. There is a measure of how cruel the toothache is, in how dangerous a cure the old healers were willing to risk against it. The 69th remedy is this: for the bad tooth, beside the dangerous smoke of the henbane, the healers used the gentler and the homelier cures, the warming aromatic things laid against the aching tooth. The clove-like spices where they could be got, traded north at great cost, and the warm salt water held in the mouth, and the chewing of the warming herbs upon the sore side. The warm salt water swilled, and held against the aching tooth eased the soreness, and cleaned the gathering badness, and the aromatic spices and herbs, laid against the tooth, numbed the pain a little, and sweetened the foul mouth of the rotting tooth. It was the everyday cure for the everyday toothache, the warm salt water and the aromatic herb, kept for the common aching tooth, while the dangerous henbane smoke was kept for the worst. And between the two of them the old healer did what could be done against that small cruel pain, in an age long before there was any way to mend a rotten tooth, but to bear it, or to ease it, or, at the last and worst, to draw it out. The 70th remedy is this: the people of the north cleaned their teeth, and kept them, by the evidence of the old graves, in far better state than we might think. For the diggers who open those old graves find, again and again, the teeth of the dead sound and whole, and worn down evenly with use, but not rotted away. The teeth of a people who ate little of the sweet things that ruin our own. They cleaned them with the chewing of the twigs and the cleaning of the mouth. They chewed the ends of soft twigs, of hazel and of birch and of other woods, until the fibres frayed and softened into a kind of small soft brush, and with this they rubbed and cleaned their teeth and their gums, working it along the rows of the teeth and into the gaps between. And they cleaned the mouth too with the warm salt water, swilled and spat, and with the chewing of the sweet aromatic herbs to freshen the breath. It seems a small thing, the chewed twig of hazel, and yet it kept the teeth clean and the gums firm. And the old people of the north, who ate little of the sweet things that rot our teeth today, and who cleaned their teeth with the frayed twig and the salt water, often kept their teeth sound into an age that would shame us. The frayed hazel twig was a true and simple toothbrush, and the chewing of it cleaned the teeth and firmed the gums, and the people of the north used it, morning by morning, a small daily care of the body that kept the cruel toothache, as often as not, away before ever it began. The 71st remedy is this: for the swollen limb, the joint or the leg swollen hot and tight with the gathering of the hurt, the people of the north reached, as they reached for so many things, for the cold, and the great cold they had always to hand. In that cold land by the cold sea was the cold of the sea itself, and of the cold running stream that came down off the snow. The swollen aching limb was lowered into the cold sea water or the cold running stream and held there until it grew numb, the cold drawing the heat and the swelling slowly out, the salt of the sea doing its own quiet cleansing work upon any broken skin. the icy water dulling the throb of the hurt. It was a hardy cure, the cold sea bathing, fitted to a hardy people who lived by the cold sea, and thought little of its chill. And it was sound, for the cold does truly ease the swelling, and dull the throbbing of the hot hurt, and the salt sea cleans a wound as well. The man with the swollen, sprained ankle would limp down to the cold edge of the fjord and stand in the icy water until the leg grew numb and the swelling eased and the throbbing dulled, and he limped back up to the warm longhouse the better for it, the cold sea having drawn the worst of the hot swelling out. The 72nd remedy is this: for the sore and reddened and weeping eye, the eye inflamed with the constant smoke of the longhouse, or the bite of the cold wind, or the glare of the snow, or some small sickness of its own. The healers of the north made a gentle wash, a weak cool infusion of the soothing herbs, of the eyebright, the small low herb with its tiny white and yellow flowers, whose very name declares its use, and of the chickweed, the low soft sprawling weed of every garden and every patch of bare ground, steeped gentle and weak, and then strained with great care through a clean cloth, so that not the smallest fragment of the herb remained, and cooled to no more than a mild warmth, and used to bathe the sore eye, dabbed on with a soft clean cloth, or dropped in gently. The gentle wash soothed the redness, and eased the soreness, and cleaned the weeping eye. And it was used too for the eyes of the newborn, and the eyes of the old. The eyes of the people of the north suffered much from the constant smoke of the longhouse fire that had no chimney but only the smoke, hole high in the roof, and from the cold and the wind and the bright glare of the snow. And so the soothing eye wash was a regular need, the gentle, cool infusion of the eyebright and the chickweed, bathed upon the sore red eye to soothe and cool and clean it. The 73rd remedy is this: for the burn, the scald of the boiling pot, or the searing of the hearth fire, a common hurt in a life lived so close around the open fire, where the children played within reach of the flames, and the cooking was done over the open embers, and a spilled pot of boiling water, or a hand laid carelessly on a hot stone, was the work of a careless moment. The healers of the north reached above all for the honey, the golden salve of the bee, smeared cool and thick upon the burn, and bound over with clean cloth. The honey was cool from the store, and thick, and it was spread gently over the angry red of the burn, and the coolness of it was an ease in itself, and over it a strip of clean cloth was bound, and changed each day for a fresh one. The old honey wiped gently away, and new honey spread. The honey soothed the burn and cooled it, and kept it from the dirt of the world, and would not let it turn bad, for the honey, as we have seen, holds within it a true power against the rot and the festering of a wound, and a burn dressed with honey is a burn kept clean and helped to heal. It was the great burn dressing of the old world. The cool, thick honey, and the people of the north had it, and a child scalded by the cooking pot, or a man burned at the forge or the hearth, was tended with the cool golden honey smeared thick upon the burn, and bound over with clean cloth, the soreness easing under the cool sweetness, the burn kept clean, and helped by the oldest and the gentlest of dressings to heal. The 74th remedy is this: for the cracked and the chapped and the broken skin, the skin split and sore with the cold and the wind and the hard labor of the northern life, the healers made the healing salves, and a great one was made of the marigold, the bright orange-yellow flower of the garden, the calendula as we now name it, its petals steeped into a fat or an oil to make a golden healing salve to be smeared upon the cracked and sore skin. The marigold salve soothed the broken skin and helped it to heal and kept it from turning bad. For the marigold carries within it a true power to soothe and to heal the skin. And it is used for the very same purpose still, the bright flower of the garden steeped into a golden salve for the sore and broken skin. The hands of the people of the north, cracked and chapped and split with the cold and the wet and the endless hard labor, were soothed and healed with the golden marigold salve, smeared in warm by the fire, the broken skin easing and closing under the soft healing of the flower. The 75th remedy is this. The plainest of all the salves of the north was made of the rendered fat of the sheep, the soft white tallow, melted and clarified and worked smooth. And into it the healers worked the healing herbs, the marigold or the comfrey or the plantain, or whatever the hurt called for, to make a healing salve to smear upon the sore and the cracked and the chapped. The sheep's tallow was the base of 100 salves, the soft white fat that every house had from its own flock, melted and strained and worked with the herbs into a smooth healing grease, kept in a small horn box in the healer's chest, and smeared upon the cracked hand, the chapped lip, the sore and broken skin. It was the everyday salve of the north, the herb worked into the sheep's tallow, the homeliest and the most reliable of the healer's preparations, made from the fat of their own flocks and the herbs of their own gathering, smeared warm upon the hurt by the steady patient hand of the healer in the firelit dark. The 76th remedy is this. We come once more to the comfrey, that knit bone we met among the broken bones, for it was the great healer of the sprain and the wrench, and the bruise as well as of the broken bone. For a sprained ankle, or a wrenched wrist, or a deep bruise, the healers made a poultice of the bruised leaf, or the grated root of the comfrey, and bound it warm about the hurt, and the herb did its slow deep work, easing the swelling and the soreness, and helping the strained and bruised flesh to mend. So strong was the comfrey's power to mend the hurts beneath the skin, that its names all speak of it. The knitting of the bone, the setting of the bone, and there is true virtue in it, for the comfrey carries within it something that truly does help the bruised and torn and broken flesh to grow back together. The man who had wrenched his ankle on the icy path, or the woman who had bruised her arm at her hard labor, was tended with the warm comfrey poultice bound about the hurt, and the swelling eased, and the soreness softened, and the strained flesh, under the slow, deep healing of the knit bone, began to mend. The 77th remedy is this. For the troubled skin, the rash and the itch and the foul skin that would not clear, the healers of the north reached for the cleavers, the goosegrass, the long straggling weed of the hedge and the ditch, whose square stems and narrow leaves are covered all over with tiny hooked hairs, so that the whole plant clings and sticks to the clothes and the hands and the very wool of the sheep of any who brush against it, and the children, in every age, have flung it at one another's backs for the way it clings. The fresh green plant was crushed and steeped into a cool green wash, and used to bathe the troubled skin, and was drunk too as a cleansing drink to clean the blood and clear the skin from within. For the old healers held that a foul skin was the sign of a body that needed cleansing. and they cleansed it with the cool green washes and the cleansing drinks of the cleavers and its kindred. It was a herb of cleansing, the cleavers, the clinging weed of the hedge, turned to the cleaning of the skin and the blood. The cool green wash bathed upon the troubled skin, the cleansing drink given to clear it from within. One more of the common weeds of the wayside that the old healers knew for a true and useful medicine, where we see only a clinging nuisance to be pulled from our clothes. The 78th remedy is this. We have spoken of the setting of the broken bone, but there was a gentler need too, the bracing and the supporting of the weak, or the wrenched joint that was not broken through, but would not bear the body's full weight. And for this the healers of the north used the same birch bark and the same binding that served them for the splint, broad strips of the bark soaked soft in warm water until they could be bent and wrapped close and warm about the weak ankle or the wrenched knee and bound firm with cords and left to dry, where the bark dried hard again and held its curve and braced and supported the joint while it slowly mended. The birch bark brace held the weak joint and let it rest and mend while still bearing some of the body's weight, and the light strong bark that curled so naturally about a limb and dried so hard was as good for the brace as for the splint. The man with the weak wrenched ankle, who must still walk to his work, for there was no resting in the hard life of the north, was braced with the birch bark bound firm about the joint, supporting it, letting it bear the weight, letting it slowly mend. The light strong bark of the everywhere birch turned once more to the healing of the body. The 79th remedy is this. The people of the north, who lived by the sea and took the whale and the seal and the great fish of the cold waters, knew the goodness of the fish oil and the whale oil, the rich oil rendered from the fish and the sea beasts. They would hang the fish to dry in the cold wind off the sea, and render the fat of the seal and the whale in great pots, and keep the oil in vessels through the winter. And they took it by the spoonful, and they rubbed it in for the joints and the body, and the long winter health. The rich oil of the cold water fish, taken into the body, kept off some of the wasting and the weakness of the long dark winter, and rubbed into the aching joint it warmed and eased it. And the people of the north, eating much of the fat fish of their cold seas, and rendering its oil for their use, took in, all unknowing, a true goodness that the far inland peoples lacked. We know now that the oil of the cold water fish holds a true and needed goodness for the body, for the joints and the bones, and the long winter health. And the people of the north, eating their fat fish and rendering their fish oil and rubbing it into their aching joints, had stumbled, by the plain habit of their seafaring life, upon one of the quiet goods of their cold and fish-rich land. The 80th remedy is this, and with it we will leave the aching of the body and turn to the troubles of the mind. For the swelling and the inflammation, the hot, tight, angry gathering of a hurt, the healers of the north used the cooling pack of clay, or of cool, wet earth, dug from the bank of the stream, where it lay cold and smooth and grey. The cold, wet clay laid thick upon the hot swelling to draw the heat, and the swelling slowly out, smoothed close about the shape of the hurt, held there and renewed for a fresh cool pack whenever it warmed through and began to dry. The cool, wet clay drew the heat from the hot hurt as the cold stone did. But it could be laid thick and shaped close about an awkward swelling, where the stone could not, and it held its coolness long, and so it was used for the hot, tight swelling that the cold stone could not reach. It is among the oldest of all the cures of the world, the cool clay laid upon the hurt, found among peoples all across the earth, and the people of the north had it too. The cold, wet clay from the bank of the stream, laid thick and cool upon the hot, swollen hurt, drawing the heat and the fire of it slowly out, one more of the plain right cures that needed no learning to be true. The cool earth itself laid upon the body to draw the fever of the hurt away. Now, before we go on, let us pause once more, here in the deep of the night, and listen. The storm is nearly spent. The wind has fallen to a long, low murmur over the turf roof, and the snow has stopped, and outside, beyond the timber wall, the great cold silence of the deep north has come down over the white land, the silence of the snow and the stars and the long dark. The fire glows low and red down the center of the hall, and the people sleep along the benches, wrapped in their furs, their slow breathing rising and falling all down the long room, and the old healer sits on by the embers, in no hurry, for the night is not yet over, her hands at rest in her lap, her eyes half closed, listening to the wind fall and the house breathe. We have tended the hurts of the body, the wound and the fever, and the belly and the birth and the ache, all the hurts that we can see and touch, all the hurts that the hand can reach and the herb can ease. But there are hurts that cannot be seen, that no hand can reach and no salve can soothe. The hurts of the mind and the spirit, the sleeplessness that keeps a weary body wakeful in the dark, the grief that lies heavy on the heart, the fear that comes down upon the lonely and the sick in the long dark hours when the rest of the house is sleeping. These too the old healer must tend, and tend most gently of all, with her quiet herbs and her warm brews and her low murmured songs and the plain warm comfort of her presence in the dark. So let us turn now, softly, in the deep of the quiet night, to the herbs for the troubled mind and the long sleepless dark, for these of all the remedies of the north are perhaps the closest to what we have come here tonight to seek, and perhaps the ones that will do you listening the most quiet good. The 81st remedy is this: for the sleepless one, the body weary and the mind unquiet, who lay awake in the dark while the others slept all about, hearing the wind and the sea and the small sounds of the house, and unable, for all the weariness, to follow the others down into sleep. The healers of the north reach for the valerian, the tall herb of the damp ground, with its clusters of small pale pink-white flowers, and, hidden in the earth beneath, its root of a strange heavy earthy smell, a smell some find unpleasant and cats find wonderful, the great sleep herb of the old world. The root was dug and dried and steeped into a warm drink, and given at the end of the day, a little while before the lying down, to the one who could not sleep, and it calmed the unquiet mind and loosened the tense and wakeful body, and brought down, gently and without force, the soft heavy weight of sleep. So old and so trusted is the valerian for the bringing of sleep, that it is used for the very same purpose still. The strange smelling root that calms the mind and eases the body into rest, and the people of the north had it. The warm cup of valerian by the dying fire, the unquiet mind slowly stilling, the tense body slowly loosening, the soft heaviness of sleep coming down at last upon the one who had lain so long awake in the dark. The 82nd remedy is this: The plainest and the kindest of all the sleep cures of the north was the warm drink at the hearth at the close of the day, the warm milk with honey stirred into it, and perhaps a few of the gentle calming herbs steeped in it, given warm into the hands of the one who could not settle. The milk was warmed slowly at the edge of the embers in the small soapstone pot until it steamed but did not boil, and the honey was stirred in until it dissolved, and the warm cup was wrapped in both hands and held close, and sipped slowly in the firelight, while the rest of the house grew quiet for the night. The warmth of it, and the sweetness of the honey, and the gentle herbs, and the quiet of the hearth at the day's end, and the simple holding of the warm cup in the cold dark, all worked together to ease the body and quiet the mind and bring on the softness of sleep, and there is a true comfort in it, the warm sweet drink at the fire at the end of the day, that goes far beyond anything the herbs alone could do. It is a cure that has never left us, the warm milk and honey at bedtime, given to the wakeful child and taken by the wakeful old, and the people of the north had it. The warm cup at the dying fire, the sweetness on the tongue, the warmth spreading through the tired body, the long day letting go at last, the soft slow easing towards sleep. The 83rd remedy is this. We come once more to the mugwort, that old honoured herb of so many uses, for it was, among all its other virtues, a herb of dreams, laid beneath the pillow or the head of the sleeper to bring true and quiet and vivid dreams. The dried herb was gathered into a small soft bag, or simply a bundle of the dried grey-green stems, and tucked beneath the head of the one who slept badly, who was troubled by dark dreams, or who woke again and again in the night, and the faint dry scent of it rose softly into the dark as the head pressed down upon it. The people of the north held that the mugwort under the head brought dreams of meaning and kept the dark and troubling dreams away. And so the eldest of herbs, the herb of the wound and the smoke and the worm, took its place too among the cures of the troubled night, tucked beneath the head of the restless sleeper to guard and to gentle their dreams. It was half medicine and half something older. The mugwort under the pillow, a herb that stood always on the border between the healing of the body and the healing of the unseen, and in the matter of dreams it stood most of all upon that border. The dry grey roadside herb laid beneath the head in the dark to call the good dreams and to keep the bad ones away, one more of the gentle old comforts of the long northern night. The 84th remedy is this, for the anxious heart, the heart that raced and fluttered with the fear and the worry that keep a body from its rest. The healers of the north reached for the flower of the linden, the lime tree, the great spreading tree whose small pale fragrant flowers hang in their soft clusters in the early summer and fill the warm air. On a still summer evening, with their honey scent so heavy and so sweet that the whole tree seems to hum with the bees that come to it. The flowers were gathered in their brief summer flowering on a dry day and dried gently in the shade and kept and steeped into a warm fragrant drink and given to calm the anxious heart and quiet the worried mind and ease the body towards sleep. And the soft honey sweet warmth of the linden flower tea was a gentle comfort to the troubled and the fearful. A little of the warmth and the sweetness of the long summer evening brought back into the cold and the dark of the anxious winter night. It is a calming herb, the linden flower, used to soothe the nerves and quiet the heart and bring on a gentle rest, and used for the very same purpose still in many lands, the soft fragrant tea of the lime flower, given to the anxious and the wakeful. The one whose heart was troubled, who could not rest for the racing of it in the dark, was given the warm linden flower drink by the fire, and the racing heart slowly stilled, and the worried mind slowly quieted, and the soft sweetness eased them down towards sleep. The 85th remedy is this. There is a sickness of the spirit that comes most of all in the far north, in the long dark of the winter, when the sun barely climbs above the rim of the world, and the days shrink to a few grey hours of half-light, and the long nights press down upon the house, week after week after week. And the spirit grows heavy and low, and weary and dull, with the long want of the light, a heaviness of the dark that the people of the far north, who live through the longest and the deepest of all the winters, must have known better than any people on the earth. Against the heaviness of the spirit they reached, among other things, for the herb that the old world came to call by the name of a saint, the sun herb, the one with the small bright golden star-shaped flowers that bloom at the very height of the summer, at the turning of the year when the light is greatest, and that hold the people felt. Some of that high summer light within them. The herb was steeped and given to lift the low and heavy spirit, and there is, we now know, a true virtue in it against the heaviness of the mind. The small golden flower of the high summer sun, holding its light through the dark months, given to the one whose spirit had grown low and heavy in the long northern dark, to lift them a little back toward the light. The 86th remedy is this, and it is not a herb at all, nor a salve, nor a carved sign, but it was, in its own quiet way, one of the deepest medicines of the troubled mind in the whole of the Old North. And it is the telling of stories by the fire. In the long dark of the winter evenings, when the work of the short grey day was done, and there was nothing left to do but wait out the long night, and the people gathered close about the low fire in the long house, wrapped in their furs, the children at the front and the old at the back, one among them, one with the gift for it, would begin to tell the old tales, the sagas of the heroes and the gods and the great deeds and the great sorrows of the people gone before, in the slow, rich, measured way of the old telling, the voice rising and falling in the firelight, and the others would listen, all of them, the young and the old, drawn out of their own small cares and aches and worries into the great old story. The mind quieted and the spirit eased, and the long dark night carried over, gently hour by hour, on the slow steady current of the tale. There was healing in it, real healing, for the troubled and grieving and fearful mind to be drawn out of itself into the old story, to be carried along by the slow voice in the firelit dark, to lay down its own small heavy load for a while, and take up instead the great old griefs and joys of the heroes of the tale. The voice in the firelit dark, the old tale slowly unwinding, the listeners quieted and eased, the long night carried gently over toward the dawn. It is, perhaps, of all the old medicines, the one nearest to what we ourselves are doing here. Tonight, in this long quiet hour, you listening, and the slow voice telling, and the night carried gently over toward the morning. The 87th remedy is this. The great drink of the north was the Arl, brewed from the barley in every house. The warm brown ale that was the drink of every meal and every feast, and every long winter evening by the fire, and into the owl, for the brewing and the flavor and the keeping, the people put the bitter flowers of the hops and other bitter herbs, the hop being the climbing vine that grows up through the hedges and over the walls and hangs out its soft pale green cones in the late summer. And these bitter brewing herbs, the hops above all, had a gentle power to ease and to calm and to bring on sleep, a power the people surely felt, whether or not they named it, in the heaviness that came down upon them after the warm evening cup. The hop, the climbing vine whose soft green cones give the owl its bitter savour and its keeping, is itself a gentle sleep herb, calming and soothing and bringing on rest, and so the evening cup of all at the fire, with the hops within it, was a sleep cure as much as a drink, easing the day's cares and loosening the tired body and helping it toward its rest. The people of the north did not, perhaps, think of their owl as a medicine, and yet the warm evening cup of it by the fire, with the calming hop within it, eased them toward sleep as surely as any of the herbs of the healer's box and the hop pillow, the small bag of the dried hop flowers laid beneath the head to bring on sleep, was a true and a gentle sleep cure of the old north. The same calming herb that flavored the owl turned now to the quieting of the sleepless night. The 88th remedy is this. Among the gentle calming flowers steeped for the troubled mind and the sleepless night, the people of the north used the small daisy, like flowers of the calming herbs of their fields and gardens. The kindred of the chamomile and the feverfew, and the other small white and gold-flowered herbs that hold a gentle, soothing virtue. They were gathered in the height of the summer, when the small flowers were fully open, and dried with care in the shade, so that they kept their color and their scent, and tied in small bundles, and laid by in the healer's box against the long sleepless nights of the winter to come. These were steeped into warm, soothing drinks, and given at the close of the day to quiet the mind, and settle the stomach, and ease the body towards sleep. And the soft, warm, fragrant cup of the calming flower at the dying fire was one of the gentlest of all the cures of the troubled night. There is a quiet detail in it that lingers. The way the small dried flowers dropped into the hot water, slowly opened again in the warmth and the wet, unfolding their little petals once more, as if remembering the summer they grew in and gave back. Into the cold winter room, the faint sweet ghost of the long bright days of their growing. The small white and gold flower, steeped warm, the soft scent of it rising in the steam. The gentle easing of the mind and the body, it is a cure so gentle and so kind that it has never left us, the warm cup of the calming flower at bedtime, given to soothe and to settle and to ease towards sleep. And the people of the north had it, in their own northern kinds, the small soothing flowers of their fields, steeped warm by the fire and given into the hands of the wakeful at the close of the long day. The 89th remedy is this, and with it we begin to cross over gently into that strange border country where the herb gives way to the charm and the medicine of the body gives way to the medicine of belief, for it is the owl, runes. The runes carved upon the drinking horn to guard and to gladden the one who drank from it. In that same old poem of the north, where the wise woman teaches the hero the uses of the runes, she names the owl, runes, the runes to be carved upon the horn and the back of the hand, to guard the drinker from harm and from the treachery that might be mixed into the cup. And there were the gladness, runes too, the runes carved to bring joy and to lift the heavy heart. So the people of the north carved the old signs upon the horn from which they drank, to guard the drink and to gladden the drinker, half a ward against poison, and half a medicine for the heavy spirit. The carved sign upon the horn meant to make the owl within it a thing of safety and of joy. It was belief, not medicine, and yet the carving of the gladness, runes upon the cup, the old signs meant to lift the heart and bring the joy, shows us how close, in the old north, the healing of the spirit lay to the carving of the rune, how the medicine of the herb and the medicine of the sign stood side by side. Both reached for against the heaviness of the heart. The 90th remedy is this: the healers of the north healed not only with the herb and the hand, but with the voice, with the quiet song or chant hummed and murmured over the sick and the restless and the dying, the old charms and the old songs that the people called by their own name for such singing. A low half-sung, half-spoken murmuring that ran on and on, slow and even, with no jolt and no end, the way the wind runs on over the turf roof, the way the sea runs on over the shingle. The healer would sit by the one who could not rest, the feverish child, the restless old one, the frightened sick, and would lay a hand upon them, perhaps on the brow or the shoulder, and would hum and murmur the old quiet songs over them, the slow low sound of the voice in the firelit dark, soothing and stilling them, easing them breath by slow breath towards sleep. We need not believe that the words of the charm held any power in themselves to see the true comfort of it, the low slow voice singing softly over the restless one in the dark, the human sound of it, the kindness of it, the steady presence of the one who sat and sang, and did not leave them alone with their sickness and their fear. The quiet song over the sick, the low murmured charm in the firelit dark, was one of the oldest and gentlest of all the healer's arts, and there was true healing in the sound and the presence and the kindness. Whatever the old words themselves could or could not do. The 91st remedy is this: against the fears of the night terrors and the dark imaginings that came down upon the sick and the grieving and the lonely in the long dark hours when the rest of the world was sleeping. The deepest cure the people of the north had was the simple and the oldest one of all, the cure of company, the shared warmth of the sleeping bench, the plain animal closeness of the others, all about in the dark. No one in the old longhouse slept alone. They slept close, many to a bench, the whole household together, in the one long warm room. And so the one who woke in the dark with their fears woke not into a cold and empty solitude, but into the warm, breathing closeness of their own people all about them. And the fear, in that warmth and that closeness, lost its sharpest edge. There is a deep old wisdom in it, and a deep old comfort that we, who sleep each alone in our cold, separate rooms, have largely lost. The warmth of the shared sleeping place, the breathing of the others in the dark, the knowledge, even half asleep, that one is not alone, that the people are all about, that the dark, however deep, is shared. It was, perhaps, the truest cure of all for the fears of the night, the plain warm company of one's own people in the dark, and the people of the north had it, in full measure, in their warm, crowded longhouses through the long dark winters of the north. The 92nd remedy is this, and with it we will leave the troubles of the mind, and turn at the last to the strangest country of all, where the medicine of the hand met the medicine of belief. For the easing of the worn and weary body and the troubled spirit both, the people of the north reached for the warmth of the water, the warm bath, and where the land gave it, the warm spring, the place where the warm water rises of itself out of the cold ground, a thing more common in some of the northern lands than in others, a marvel and a gift where it was found. To lie in the warm water, to feel the warmth ease the aching body and loosen the tense muscle and soothe the troubled mind, was a deep comfort and a true healing, and the warm springs, where they were found, were treasured and used and gathered at, the warm water rising of itself out of the cold northern ground, a gift of warmth in a land of cold, easing the bodies and the spirits of the people who came to lie in it. The warm bath, the warm spring, the warmth easing the worn body, and the troubled mind together. It is among the oldest and the deepest of all the comforts of the body, and the people of the north, in their cold land, treasured it where they found it, and were eased by it, body and spirit together in the warm rising water. Now, before we come to the last of our remedies, let us pause one final time, here in the deepest quiet of the night. With the storm spent and the snow stopped, and the great cold silence lying over the white land outside, and the fire glowing low and red down the center of the warm hall, and the people sleeping all about in their furs, and the old healer sitting on by the embers, in no hurry, at the end of the long night. We have come now to the strangest part of all the old healing, the part that is hardest for us to understand, and the part, perhaps, that we should approach most gently of all. For we, in our own age, have drawn a sharp and a deep line between the medicine of the body and the medicine of belief, between the thing that truly works upon the flesh and the thing that works only upon the hope. And we have set the one on the bright side of the line and the other on the dark, and called the one true and the other false. But the people of the north drew no such line at all. To them, the carved rune and the steeped herb were not two different kinds of thing, the one real and the other not, but two parts of the one single art of healing, both reached for in the one moment of need, both believed in with the one whole heart. The medicine of the herb and the hand ran together, for them, with the medicine of the carved rune and the spoken charm and the call upon the gods, and the wise healer and the seer and the worker of charms were very often one and the same person. The one who knew the herbs of the hillside, knowing also the carving of the signs, and the words of the songs, and the names of the gods of healing. And we will not stand over them tonight, and laugh at them for it, and we will not scold them for mixing, as we would say, the true cure with the empty charm. We will simply walk with them a little way into that strange border country, and listen, with no scorn, for there is no scorn owed to people who feared the dark and the unseen, and the cold and the death that pressed so close about their small warm circle of firelight, and who reached, in their fear, for every comfort they could find, the herb and the hand, and the rune and the song and the watching gods, and held them all together, and were, very often, the better for it. Let us turn now, gently, to the healing that lay where the herb met the rune. The 93rd remedy is this, and it comes straight out of the sagas, out of the great saga of the poet and warrior Egil, a hard and difficult and brilliant man. The tale tells how Egil came once to a farm where a young woman lay sick and wasting, and could find no ease, and how Egil looked and found that someone, a young man who had meant to help her and had bungled it, had carved runes wrongly and laid them in her bed, and that these badly carved runes were the very thing that was making her ill. And Egil scraped away the false runes and burned the shavings, and then he carved new and true healing runes and laid them beneath her, and the young woman began to mend. It is a strange tale to us. The sickness caused by the wrongly carved rune and cured by the rightly carved one, and yet it tells us, plainly and from within, how the people of the north thought about such things, that the rune carved aright could heal, and the rune carved amiss could harm, that the sign itself held power for good or for ill, and that the healer must know not only the herb and the hand, but the carving of the true and healing sign. Egil scraping away the false runes and carving the true ones, and the wasting girl beginning to mend, is as clear a window as we have into the old belief that the carved sign itself was a medicine to be got right or got wrong, with a life or a death hanging upon the carving. The 94th remedy is this: the carving of the healing runes was a real and a regular part of the old northern healing, the cutting of the old angular signs upon a stick or a bone, or a small flat piece of wood with the point of a knife, slowly and carefully, for the carving must be right, and the laying of it upon or near or beneath the sick one, that the power of the sign might do its healing work. We have found such things in the cold ground, in the diggings of our own day, sticks and bones carved with runes, some of them plainly meant for healing, carved with the old signs and the old words to drive out the sickness or the pain, the very objects the old healers made and used, lifted out of the dark earth 1,000 years on, the marks of the knife still sharp upon them. The healer would cut the runes carefully, for the carving must be right, as Egil's tale so sharply tells, and would lay the carved thing by the sick one, and would speak the old words over it, and the sign and the word together were meant to drive the sickness out. It was, to them, a true medicine, the carved healing rune, no less real than the herb or the salve, a thing to be got right and used with care. And the healer who knew the herbs of the hillside knew also the carving of the signs. The two knowledges held together in the one head, and the one pair of careful hands, the herb for the body and the rune for the unseen sickness behind it. The 95th remedy is this: when the healer set to her work, she called very often upon the gods of healing, and chief among them was Aya, the gentle goddess of healing of the north, named in the old lore that comes down to us as the best of healers, the best of leeches, the one to whom the sick and the hurt were commended, the one upon whose quiet name the healer called, as she washed the wound or steeped the herb or carved the sign by the firelight. We know little of her, only her name, and her gentle office among the goddesses, the keeper of healing, the best of those who heal, and yet the little we know is enough, and it is precious. We know little of air, only her name and her gentle office, the goddess of healing, the best of the leeches, and yet that little is enough to tell us that the people of the north set a goddess over the art of healing, that they held the mending of the body to be a holy work watched over by a gentle power, and that the healer, bending to her task, felt herself not alone in it, but joined, in some quiet way, to that gentle watching goddess of the healing hand. To call upon air was to set the small mortal work of the healer within a greater frame, to ask the gentle goddess of healing to lend her power to the herb and the hand. And there was comfort in it for the healer and the sick alike, the sense that the mending of the hurt body was a holy thing, watched over and helped by the kindest of the powers above. The 96th remedy is this: there moved through the world of the Old North a figure stranger and deeper than the herb healer, the seeress, the Valva, the woman who carried the staff and worked the deep magic and saw what others could not see, who went veiled in a measure of awe and a measure of fear, honored and a little dreaded wherever she came, and she too was sometimes called upon in sickness to see the unseen cause of it and to work against it. The Violove went from house to house and farm to farm, and was received with honor and a little fear, and was set in a high seat, and worked her seeing and her singing, and saw into the things that were hidden, the cause of the sickness, the turn of the fate, the will of the unseen powers. She was not quite a healer of the herb and the hand, but she was reached for in the troubles that the herb could not mend, the wasting sickness with no clear cause, the ill luck that hung over a house, the trouble that seemed to come from the unseen world, and she worked against these with her seeing and her singing and her deep strange knowledge. The Valvi with her staff, set in her high seat in the firelit hall, singing the old songs and seeing the hidden things, stands at the very deepest end of the old northern healing, where it passes beyond the herb and the hand and the rune into the deep dark country of the seeing and the singing and the working upon the unseen world itself. The 97th remedy is this: the people of the north wore amulets against sickness and harm, small worn things hung about the neck or carried close against the skin, and chief among them was the little hammer of Thor, the small silver or iron hammer worn as the sign of the great god of the thunder, the strong god who guarded the world of men against the giants and the monsters of the dark, the protector of the people, hung about the neck on a cord as a ward against all harm. The little hammer has come up in great number from the old graves, in silver and in bronze and in iron, worn by men and women alike, some plain and some richly worked. The sign of the protecting god carried close against the body as a guard against sickness and ill luck and the unseen dangers of the world. There was amber too, the warm golden stone we have already met, worn against sickness and harm, and there were other small worn things besides, all carried close against the body to guard it. They were not medicine, the little hammer and the amber bead, and yet they were, in the old mind, a true protection, a guard against the sickness and the harm that came from the unseen world. And there was comfort in them, the warm familiar weight of the little hammer at the throat, the soft golden glow of the amber, the sense of being guarded, of carrying close against one's own body the sign of the protecting God. The 98th remedy is this: there were in the land of the north the healing wells and the sacred springs, the places where the water rose of itself out of the ground, clear and cold and unfailing even in the deep of the winter, and was held to be holy and to carry a power to heal, places that had been held holy very often, since long before anyone could remember why. The people came to these holy waters from far off, walking the long cold roads with their sicknesses and their hurts, to drink of them and to bathe in them, and to leave there their small offerings, a coin, a pin, a scrap of cloth tied to a branch, and to ask of the unseen powers of the place the healing they could not find elsewhere. Some of these holy waters were truly good for the body, rich in the minerals of the deep earth, or simply clean and cold and pure, and the bathing and the drinking did real good. And some did good in another way, in the hope and the belief and the journey made, and the offering left, the deep old comfort of having gone to the holy place and asked the holy powers for help. The healing well, the sacred spring, the holy water rising out of the ground, was one of the old places of healing of the north, where the people came with their hurts and their hopes, to drink and to bathe and to ask, and to carry away, with the cold pure water, a measure of hope, which is itself, as we have seen again and again tonight, a true and a needed part of all healing. The 99th remedy is this. The people of the north believed, as many of the old peoples believed, that some sickness came from the unseen darts of the unseen folk, the small hidden people of the land. The elves and the others, who were thought to dwell in the hills and the stones, and the waters all about, who were thought to shoot tiny, invisible darts into the bodies of men and of cattle, causing the sudden sharp pain in the side, or the sudden lameness of a beast, or the slow wasting sickness that came on for no cause that anyone could see or name. Against this elf shot, as the Old English called it, the healers worked with the charm and the rune, and sometimes with a small smooth stone, a healing stone, held to draw the unseen dart out of the body, rubbed upon the place of the pain to draw the hidden hurt away. We see in it the old struggle of people to find a cause for the sicknesses that had no visible cause, the sudden pain, the sudden wasting, and to find a way to fight what they could not see. The unseen dart met with the unseen power of the charm and the rune and the healing stone. It seems strange to us, the belief in the elf shot and the cure by the rubbing stone, and yet behind it lies the same deep human need we all still feel, to find a reason for our suffering and a way to fight it. And the people of the north, facing the sicknesses they could not see or understand, did the most human thing of all. They named the unseen enemy, and they reached for an unseen weapon against it, and they did not give up hope. The 100th remedy is this, the last of all our 100, and it is not a single herb or charm or stone, but the whole great art itself. The way the people of the north wove the herb, and the hand, and the word, and the call upon the gods all together into one healing, and the way they passed it on. For the old healer of the north did not, as we do, hold apart the medicine of the body from the medicine of the spirit, the herb from the charm, the salve from the song. She washed the wound, and she laid on the yarrow, and she carved the healing rune, and she called upon air, and she hummed the quiet song, all in the one long work of healing, all of a piece, the body and the spirit tended together, because to her they were not two things but one. And all of this great woven art she held in her head and her hands, for there were no books to hold it, and she passed it on the only way it could be passed, by word and by hand, to the younger women who watched her work, who learned the herbs of the hillside, and the carving of the signs, and the words of the songs by long years at her side, and who would, in their turn, pass it on again, down the long quiet chain of the healing women of the north, mother to daughter, healer to apprentice, across the unrecorded centuries. We know so few of their names. They did not write them down, for they could not write at all, and the sagas, busy with the deeds of the men, give us only a glimpse here and there of the women who healed. But every wound that closed, every fever that broke, every child that came safe into the world, every sleepless soul eased toward rest in those long cold northern nights, was the work of those nameless careful hands, reaching out of the silence of 1,000 years to pass the green and quiet knowledge gently on. Before we let the night go fully into its rest, let us hold for one last quiet moment the thing that runs through the whole of it, the deep, gentle thread that ties together all the 100 remedies we have walked among tonight. For all their strangeness, for all the carved runes and the called upon gods and the elf shot and the smelling of the onion through the wound, the people of the north were doing, in the cold and the dark of their hard land, the same thing that every people in every age has done, and that we are doing here, tonight, in our own way. They were caring for one another. They were watching, with great patience and across many lifetimes, to see what eased a hurt and what did not, and holding what they learned in their memories and their hands, and passing it on. They were sitting up through the long dark nights, beside the feverish and the wounded and the frightened, keeping them warm, keeping them fed, keeping them company, not leaving them alone with their pain. And whether the herb worked or the charm worked or neither worked, but only the warmth and the kindness and the not being alone, the healer was there in the firelit dark, doing what could be done, and that, in the end, beneath all the herbs and the runes and the old strange beliefs, was the truest medicine they had, and the truest medicine there has ever been. There is a comfort in remembering it, tonight, 1,000 years on, in our own warm room in our own dark night, that the long human work of caring for one another in the cold and the dark is older than any of us, older than the books, older than the cities, as old as the first warm fire in the first long winter, and that we are only the latest in a line of warm hands reaching back into the dark, passing the small green knowledge and the warm broth, and the quiet word gently on, one to another, down all the long cold nights of the world. And so we come to the end of our 100 remedies, here in the deepest stillness of the night, with the storm long spent, and the snow lying deep and silent over the white land, and the fire burned low and red down the center of the long warm hall. The wounds are closed, and the fevers eased, and the bellies quieted, and the children safe in their mothers' arms, and the aching bodies soothed, and the troubled minds carried gently over the long dark toward the coming of the light. The old healer sits on by the embers, her work done, her box closed at her side, the dried herbs hanging quiet from the dark rafters overhead, the people all about her sleeping deep in their furs. And outside, very far off and very faint, in the great cold silence before the dawn, you can hear the first small stirrings of the waking world, a bird, perhaps, somewhere out in the snow, and the first faint graying of the long night sky beyond the smoke, hole high in the roof. There is nothing left now to do but rest. The 100 remedies are told, and you do not need to hold a single one of them, for they were never a task to be done, or a thing to be remembered, only a slow, quiet voice in the firelit dark to carry you over the long night, as the old tales carried the people of the north over their long nights 1,000 years ago. Let them all drift away now, the yarrow and the angelica and the meadowsweet, the warm milk and the warm stone, and the warm slow voice by the fire, let them all go softly, like the last of the blue smoke rising and thinning into the dark high roof. There is nothing more to listen for. There is nowhere you need to be. The fire glows low and warm, and the snow lies deep and silent, and the long night is nearly over. And you are warm, and you are safe, and you are held, like the people sleeping all about in the long low house in the winter dark. So let the breath grow slow, and let the body grow heavy, and let the shoulders soften down at last into the warmth, and let the long day, and all its small cares, fall away from you now like a cloak laid down at the door. And if you are not already gone down into sleep, let yourself go now, gently, with no hurry and no effort and nothing to hold on to. The way the snow settles in the dark, the way the fire settles slowly down to its embers, the way the old healer, her long night's work done at last, lets her own tired eyes close beside the warm red glow of the hearth. Sleep well. Rest deep. There is nothing here that asks anything of you, nothing left to do, nothing left but the warmth and the quiet, and the long, slow falling away into sleep. Good night and rest, and let the warm dark take you, soft and deep and kind, until the morning.